When Officer Laura Bennett's patrol car crashed through the ice into Frost Valley's Black River, she had seconds to live. The German Shepherd that dragged her out belonged to a man the police force would soon call a hero, but Ethan Cole didn't want their medals. He wanted answers about why a cop was being hunted by her own department. What happened next would expose the biggest corruption scandal in state history and forge an unbreakable bond between three broken souls. Stay with us until the end and comment what city you're watching from so we can see how far this story travels. The temperature had dropped to 14 degrees Fahrenheit by the time Officer Laura Bennett's shift began that Tuesday night. She remembered checking the dashboard thermometer as she climbed into her cruiser, remembered thinking that it was the kind of cold that made your lungs ache with each breath, the kind that turned moisture in your nostrils to ice crystals within seconds of stepping outside. She remembered a lot of things about that night. The way her breath formed ghostly plumes in the air, the crunch of fresh snow under her boots, the crackling static of the police radio as dispatch announced a possible disturbance at the old Miller farm on Route 7. What she didn't remember, couldn't have predicted, was that by midnight she'd be drowning in the Frost Valley River with water filling her lungs and her cruiser sinking into darkness beneath her. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Laura had been with the Frost Valley Police Department for 7 years. At 32, she'd worked her way up from traffic duty to detective, had earned commendations for bravery, had a clean record and a reputation for doing things by the book. She was good at her job, maybe too good. 3 weeks earlier, she'd stumbled onto something that made her question everything she thought she knew about her department. It started with a routine drug bust. Laura and her partner, Officer Marcus Webb, had responded to a tip about a methamphetamine lab operating out of an abandoned warehouse on the east side of town. They'd found the lab all right, along with enough product to supply the entire county for months. But what caught Laura's attention wasn't the drugs. It was the quality of the operation, the sophisticated equipment, the professional setup. This wasn't some amateur cook working out of a garage. This was organized. This was connected. And when she'd started digging into where the funding might be coming from, she'd found something that turned her blood cold. Bank records that didn't add up. Evidence that went missing from the department's storage facility, arrest reports that had been altered, and names, officers she'd worked with for years, people she'd trusted with her life, all potentially involved in a distribution network that stretched from Frost Valley all the way to the Canadian border. She'd done what she was supposed to do. She'd gone to her captain, Daniel Reeves, with her concerns. She'd laid out everything she'd found, every inconsistency, every red flag. Captain Reeves had listened carefully, his weathered face unreadable. Then he'd thanked her for her diligence, told her he'd look into it personally, and suggested she take a few days off. The investigation had been stressful, he'd said. She deserved a break. That was 2 weeks ago. Since then, Laura had noticed things. The way conversation stopped when she entered a room, the sidelong glances from fellow officers, the feeling of being watched, even when she was off duty. Her instincts, the same instincts that had made her a good cop, were screaming at her that something was very, very wrong. She'd started keeping her own files at home, copies of everything she'd found. She'd stopped talking about the investigation with anyone at the department, and she'd started watching her back. Now as she drove along Route 7 toward the Miller farm, those instincts were in overdrive. The road was dark and winding, cutting through dense forest on either side. Fresh snow had started falling an hour ago, adding another layer to the 6 inches that already blanketed the valley. The cruiser's headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating swirling flakes that seemed to dance in the beams. Laura checked her rearview mirror for the 3rd time in as many minutes. Nothing but darkness behind her. She told herself she was being paranoid, that the stress was getting to her, that there was a perfectly innocent explanation for why dispatch had sent her out here alone instead of with Webb, her usual partner. That the radio silence from dispatch for the past 20 minutes was just a technical glitch. She told herself a lot of things that night. None of them were true. The call had come in at 11:47 p.m. Possible disturbance, shots fired, Miller Farm. But as Laura approached the turnoff for the farm, something made her keep driving. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was the fact that the Miller Farm had been abandoned for 3 years, and the idea of someone squatting there in the middle of winter seemed unlikely. Maybe it was the way the dispatcher's voice had sounded, just slightly off, just enough to set off alarm bells in the back of her mind. She drove past the turnoff, continuing down Route 7, and reached for her radio. Dispatch, this is Unit 12. I'm approaching the Miller Farm location. Can you confirm the source of the disturbance call? Static. Dispatch, do you copy? More static. Then a voice, but not the dispatcher's voice. This one was male, familiar in a way that made Laura's stomach clench. Unit 12, you're going to want to pull over. It was Captain Reeves. Laura's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Captain, what are you doing on this frequency? Pull over, Bennett. Now. We need to talk. I'm responding to a call, sir. There is no call. His voice was hard now, dropping all pretense of pleasantness. Pull over. That's an order. Laura's pulse began to race. Through her rear-view mirror, she saw headlights appear behind her, maybe a quarter-mile back. Then another set. They were moving fast, closing the distance. Sir, I don't understand what's... You understand perfectly, Detective. The title was like a slap. You've been asking questions, looking at things that don't concern you. I gave you a chance to back off. You didn't take it. The headlights were closer now. Laura could make out two vehicles, dark sedans, not marked police cars. Her mind raced through possibilities, through options. She could try to outrun them, but the roads were icy and she didn't know how many cars they had or where they were positioned. She could try to radio for help, but if Reeves had control of dispatch, who would she call? She could try to reason with him, but the cold certainty in his voice told her that ship had sailed. She made a decision. Instead of slowing down, Laura pressed the accelerator. The cruiser surged forward, engine roaring as she pushed it faster down the snowy road. Behind her, the sedans accelerated to match. That was stupid, Bennett, Reeves's voice crackled through the radio. You're just making this harder on yourself. Laura didn't respond. She was too busy calculating distances, angles, trying to remember the layout of the road ahead. Route 7 followed the river for the next 3 miles before cutting inland. There were a few side roads, old logging trails that might give her a chance to lose her pursuers in the forest. The speedometer climbed, 50, 60, 70 miles per hour. Too fast for these conditions, but she didn't have a choice. The sedans were gaining, their more powerful engines eating up the distance between them. A curve appeared ahead, sharper than Laura remembered. She hit the brakes, felt the anti-lock system pulse under her foot as the cruiser's tires fought for traction on the snow-covered asphalt. The car fishtailed, back end sliding out, and for a moment Laura thought she'd lost it. But her training kicked in. She steered into the skid, eased off the brakes, and the cruiser straightened out just as she entered the curve. The first sedan wasn't as lucky, or its driver wasn't as skilled. Laura caught a glimpse in her mirror of headlights careening wildly as the vehicle lost traction and spun out, ending up facing backward in a snowbank. One down. But the second sedan was still coming, and now Laura could see a third set of headlights behind it. You can't run forever, Reeves said, his voice almost conversational now. I know where you live, Bennett. I know where your mother lives, that little house in Portland, right? How is Margaret doing these days? Still fighting that cancer? Ice flooded Laura's veins, ice that had nothing to do with the temperature. He was threatening her mother. These people, these cops she'd worked with, eaten lunch with, trusted, were threatening to hurt her mother. Something shifted in Laura in that moment. Fear gave way to cold, focused anger. If they wanted to play dirty, fine. But she wouldn't go down without a fight. A side road appeared on her right. Old pine trail, barely more than a dirt track in summer, probably impassable now with the snow. Laura blew past it. Not yet. She needed something better. The cruiser's engine was starting to strain. The temperature gauge was climbing, not dangerously yet, but getting there. She couldn't keep up this speed much longer. Behind her, the second sedan was close now, maybe 50 yards back. In the glow of her taillights, Laura could see 2 figures in the front seat. She didn't recognize them, probably hired muscle rather than actual cops. That was somehow worse. It meant Reeves had resources, organization. It meant this conspiracy went deeper than she'd thought. The radio crackled again, but this time it wasn't Reeves' voice. Target is heading east on Route 7, approaching Riverbend. A different man, younger, reporting their position to someone. We need to stop her before she reaches the bridge. If she gets across, she could make it to the state police barracks. That was useful information. They were trying to contain her, keep her on this side of the river, which meant getting across the bridge was her best bet. Laura pressed the accelerator harder, coaxing every bit of speed she could from the laboring engine. The bridge was maybe 2 miles ahead. If she could just... The third car came out of nowhere. It must have been waiting on one of the side roads, lights off, engine idling. It pulled out directly in front of her, blocking the road, and Laura had maybe 2 seconds to react. She yanked the wheel hard to the right. The cruiser left the road, plowing through a snowbank and into the trees. Branches scraped against the roof and sides with a sound like fingernails on a chalkboard. Laura fought to keep control as the car bounced over hidden rocks and fallen logs, the headlights strobing crazily through the forest. For a moment, she thought she might make it through. The trees were starting to thin ahead, and beyond them she could see open snow, maybe another road or a clearing where she could get her bearings. Then the ground disappeared beneath her. Later, piecing together what happened, Laura would learn that she'd driven onto what the locals called Dead Man's Bluff, a 30-foot embankment that dropped straight down to the river. In summer, the drop-off was clearly visible, but covered in snow in the dark, it was invisible until you were right on top of it. The cruiser went airborne. Time seemed to slow down. Laura felt the sickening lurch in her stomach as the car left the ground, saw the river rushing up to meet her through the windshield, registered with perfect clarity that she was about to die. The cruiser hit the ice nose first. The impact was catastrophic. The airbag deployed, slamming into Laura's face and chest hard enough to knock the wind out of her. The seatbelt locked tight, cutting into her shoulder and lap. Glass exploded inward as the windshield shattered, and through it all, she heard the horrible sound of ice cracking, giving way beneath the weight of the car. For a moment, just a moment, the cruiser stayed where it was, balanced precariously on the broken ice. Laura, dazed and gasping, tried to orient herself. Blood was running down her face from a cut somewhere on her forehead. Her left wrist throbbed with pain, sprained or broken, she couldn't tell. The airbag was deflating, and through the shattered windshield she could see dark water lapping at the hood of the car. Then the ice gave way completely, and the cruiser began to sink. Water rushed in through the broken windshield with shocking force and even more shocking cold. It was like being hit by a wall of knives, every nerve ending screaming in protest as the river invaded the car. Laura gasped involuntarily and immediately regretted it as freezing water filled her mouth. Training. She had training for this. Water rescue procedures. Stay calm. Don't panic. But training was one thing. Reality, trapped in a sinking car and below freezing water, was something else entirely. Laura's fingers fumbled for the seatbelt release. The water was up to her chest now, and the cold was so intense it was hard to think, hard to make her hands work properly. Everything felt slow, distant, like she was moving through syrup. The seatbelt clicked open. Small victory. But now the water was up to her neck, and the car was still sinking, pulling her down into the black depths of the river. She needed to get out, needed to swim for the surface. But which way was up? In the darkness and the disorienting rush of water, she couldn't tell. The car tilted suddenly, nose pointing down, and Laura found herself looking up at a broken circle of ice above her, the hole the cruiser had punched through. That was up. That was air. That was life. She pushed off from the sinking car, kicking hard, clawing at the water. Her sodden uniform and duty belt dragged at her like anchors. The cold was in her bones now, making her muscles sluggish, making every movement an act of supreme will. Laura's head broke the surface and she gasped, sucking in air that burned her lungs with its coldness. But she'd made it. She was alive. She just needed to get to the shore, get out of the water, get warm. Something grabbed her ankle. For one terrified moment, Laura thought the sinking cruiser had caught her uniform somehow, was pulling her back down. She kicked frantically, twisted around to see what had her. It wasn't the car. It was the current. The Frost Valley River might have looked calm on the surface, but beneath the ice it was still flowing, still pulling everything downstream. And Laura, exhausted and hypothermic and injured, was caught in its grip. She tried to swim for the shore, but the current was too strong. It pulled her away from the hole in the ice, pushed her under the solid sheet that covered most of the river. Laura's gloved hand scrabbled against the underside of the ice, trying to find purchase, trying to push herself back toward open air. But the ice was smooth and her hands were numb, and the current was relentless. Her lungs were burning. She needed to breathe, needed air. But there was only ice above her, solid and impenetrable, and the current was pulling her farther downstream, farther from the hole, farther from any chance of survival. This was it then. This was how it ended. Not in some dramatic shootout like they showed in the movies, but alone in the dark, drowning beneath the ice, while the men who'd chased her stood on the shore and watched. Laura's vision was starting to go dark around the edges. Her lungs were screaming for air, for just one more breath. Her limbs felt heavy, distant. It would be so easy to stop fighting, to just let go, to let the river take her. She almost did. But then, impossibly, she saw light above her. Not the pale glow of the moon through the ice, but bright, focused light. A flashlight beam cutting through the water, sweeping back and forth as if searching for something. Searching for her. Laura didn't know where she found the strength, but she pushed toward that light with everything she had left. Her hand broke through into open air. Somehow, impossibly, there was a hole in the ice here, and she felt something grab her wrist. Not the impersonal grip of the current, but a hand. Human and solid and impossibly strong. Laura was hauled upward with a force that would have hurt if she'd been capable of feeling anything beyond the cold. Her head broke the surface and she gasped, choking, coughing up river water. "I've got you," a man's voice said. "I've got you. Don't fight me." She couldn't have fought if she wanted to. Her body was shutting down, hypothermia stealing the last of her strength. She was vaguely aware of being pulled from the water, of lying on solid ice, of hands checking her pulse, her breathing. Jesus Christ, she's freezing. We need to get her warm. Now. That voice. Male. Deep. With a slight rasp like he smoked or had spent too much time shouting. Laura tried to open her eyes to see who was speaking, but her eyelids felt like they weighed 100 pounds each. "Dad, is she okay?" A different voice now, younger, frightened, a child. "She will be. Lily, honey, run back to the cabin and get blankets. All of them, and start the fire going, okay? Fast as you can." "Okay!" Footsteps running away through snow. Laura managed to crack her eyes open. Through blurred vision, she saw a man kneeling beside her. He was maybe in his late 30s, with dark hair and a beard that was already frosting over with ice from the river water. He'd taken off his heavy winter coat and was wrapping it around her. "Stay with me," he said, and there was something in his voice, command, certainty, like he was used to giving orders in crisis situations. "My name is Ethan. You're going to be okay, but I need to get you inside and warm, understand? This is going to hurt, but we don't have a choice." Before Laura could process what he meant, Ethan scooped her up in his arms like she weighed nothing and started running through the snow. Each jolting step sent shockwaves of pain through Laura's body. Her teeth chattered so violently she thought they might crack. Her entire body was shaking uncontrollably, her muscles spasming with cold. "I know it hurts," Ethan said, breathing hard as he ran. "But that shivering is good. It means your body's still fighting. Stay with me, officer. That's an order." Through the fog of pain and cold, Laura registered two things. First, that this stranger, Ethan, was carrying her like she was a child, moving through knee-deep snow without even slowing down. Second, that he'd called it an order, military terminology, which meant he'd probably been a soldier. She tried to speak, to ask who he was, what he was doing out here, but all that came out was a wordless moan. "Don't try to talk," Ethan said. "Save your strength. We're almost there." Through the blur of falling snow and darkness, Laura saw a cabin ahead. It was small but well-maintained, smoke rising from a stone chimney, warm light glowing in the windows. A dog was barking frantically, a big dog from the sound of it. The door flew open, and the child, Lily, stood silhouetted against the firelight inside. "I got the blankets, Dad, and I started the fire like you showed me." "Good girl, move back, honey. I need to get her inside." Ethan carried Laura through the door and straight to the fireplace. A German shepherd, the source of the barking, danced nervously nearby, whining. "Ranger back," Ethan commanded, and the dog immediately sat, though his eyes never left Laura. Ethan laid Laura down on a rug in front of the fire with surprising gentleness. Immediately, he started peeling off her sodden uniform jacket. "Lily, close your eyes for a minute, okay?" "Okay, Dad." "I need to get these wet clothes off you," Ethan said to Laura, his voice matter-of-fact but not unkind. "Hypothermia protocol. The clothes are trapping cold water against your skin. You'll warm up faster without them. I'm going to leave your undergarments on for modesty, but everything else needs to come off. Do you understand?" Laura managed a tiny nod. She knew he was right. This was basic cold water survival. Get out of wet clothes, get warm, prevent hypothermia from progressing to the point of organ failure. Ethan worked quickly and efficiently, stripping off her uniform shirt, pants, socks, and boots. His movements were clinical, professional, and Laura was struck by how gentle his calloused hands were. This was a man who knew what he was doing. Once she was down to her undershirt and underwear, Ethan wrapped her in blankets, 3 of them, thick and warm, and positioned her closer to the fire. "Lily, you can look now. Come sit with us." The little girl, she couldn't have been more than 6 or 7, appeared at Laura's side, her brown eyes wide with concern. She was wearing pajamas patterned with stars and moons. "Is the police lady going to be okay?" she asked her father. "She will be," Ethan said, "thanks to you and Ranger." "Ranger found her," Lily explained to Laura. "He was barking at the door, and Dad said it was probably just a deer, but Ranger kept barking and barking, so Dad went to check, and Ranger ran down to the river and started digging at the ice, and Dad saw the hole where your car went through, and that's when—" "Lily, honey, let her rest," Ethan interrupted gently. "I need you to do me another favor. Can you heat up some of that soup from dinner? Not too hot, just warm, and bring a mug of it." "I can do that." Lily scampered off toward what Laura assumed was the kitchen. Ethan turned his attention back to Laura. He pulled back one of the blankets to check her left wrist, the one that had been throbbing with pain. His fingers probed gently around the joint. "Sprained, not broken, I think," he said. "We'll wrap it, but it needs to be looked at by a doctor. Your head, too. That cut on your forehead is going to need stitches." "How?" Laura's voice came out as a croak. She tried again. "How did you know what to do?" Ethan pulled the blanket back over her. "Army medic. 2 tours in Afghanistan. I've dealt with hypothermia before, though usually in the mountains rather than rivers. The principles are the same." That explained the efficiency, the calm under pressure. This wasn't his first time saving someone's life. Laura's shivering was starting to ease slightly as the warmth from the fire penetrated the blankets. Feeling was returning to her extremities, painful, prickling feeling, but feeling nonetheless. That was good. That meant no frostbite. "Thank you," she managed. "You saved my life." "Thank Ranger. He's the one who found you. I just did the heavy lifting." The German shepherd, hearing his name, thumped his tail against the floor but didn't move from his sitting position. "I got the soup," Lily returned, carefully carrying a mug. "I tested it, and it's not too hot." "Perfect. Here." Ethan took the mug and held it to Laura's lips. "Small sips, don't gulp it." The soup was chicken noodle, simple and warm, and the most delicious thing Laura had ever tasted. Each swallow sent warmth spreading through her chest. "What's your name?" Lily asked, settling cross-legged on the floor beside Laura. "I'm Lily Rose Cole. I'm 7 years old. That's my dad, Ethan, and that's our dog, Ranger. We live here all by ourselves. Well, not all by ourselves. There are other people in Frost Valley, but not right nearby. Our cabin is kind of remote. Dad says that's how we like it. Quiet." "Lily," Ethan said with the long-suffering patience of a parent whose child doesn't quite grasp social boundaries, "maybe let her rest before interrogating her." "I'm not interrogating. I'm being friendly." "Right, Dad?" Despite everything, the crash, the drowning, the hypothermia, Laura found herself almost smiling. There was something about this child's unfiltered enthusiasm that was oddly comforting. "Laura," she said, "my name is Laura Bennett." "Are you really a police officer?" Lily's eyes went even wider. "That's so cool. I've never met a real police officer before. Well, I saw some at the grocery store once, but I didn't actually talk to them. Do you catch bad guys? Do you have a gun? Dad has guns, but he keeps them locked up because I'm not old enough yet. He says when I'm older, he'll teach me gun safety." "Do you drive fast in your car? Is that how you crashed? Were you chasing someone?" "Lily." There was a warning note in Ethan's voice now. "That's enough questions." Something in his tone made Lily fall silent, and Laura realized that Ethan had picked up on something his daughter hadn't. The car crash. The fact that Laura had been driving on a night like this, on a remote road, fast enough to end up in the river. Those weren't the circumstances of an ordinary accident. Ethan's eyes met Laura's over Lily's head, and she saw intelligence there and caution. He was a man who'd learned to recognize danger. "Lily, honey, why don't you go get ready for bed?" Ethan said. "It's late." "But Dad, we have a guest. We can't—" "Bed. Now. You can see Officer Bennett in the morning." Lily pouted but obeyed, trudging toward a doorway that presumably led to her bedroom. She paused at the threshold. "I'm glad Ranger found you," she said to Laura. "I'm glad you're okay." Then she was gone, leaving Laura alone with Ethan and the dog. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The only sounds were the crackling of the fire and the wind outside the cabin. Finally, Ethan stood and walked to the window, peering out into the darkness. "You want to tell me what really happened out there?" he asked quietly. Laura closed her eyes. She was so tired. Her body ached, her head throbbed. All she wanted to do was sleep. But sleep wasn't safe. Not yet. "How much did you see?" she asked. "I saw your car go into the river. I saw you swimming under the ice. And—" he paused. "I saw headlights on the bluff. 3 vehicles, maybe 4. They stopped at the edge, stayed there for maybe a minute. Then they left." Laura's blood went cold again, and this time it had nothing to do with hypothermia. "They were there?" Her voice came out sharper than she intended. "They saw you pull me out?" Ethan turned from the window, his expression unreadable. "I don't think so. We were downstream from where you went in, around the bend. The trees probably blocked their view, but they were there, yes, looking for something, or someone." He didn't ask the obvious question, who were they? But it hung in the air between them. Laura struggled to sit up, fighting against the weakness in her limbs and the weight of the blankets. She needed to think, needed to figure out what to do next. If Reeves and his people had seen her go into the water, they probably assumed she'd drowned, but they'd want to confirm that. They'd want to find a body. "I need to leave," she said. "I need to— You need to rest," Ethan interrupted firmly. "You just pulled yourself back from hypothermia. You're in no condition to go anywhere. You don't understand. Those people who were on the bluff, they're looking for you. I got that much." Ethan crossed his arms over his chest, a stance that suggested he wasn't going to be moved easily. "What I don't understand is why a police officer is running from what looked like other police vehicles." Laura stared at him. "How did you know they were police?" "The way they moved, the way they parked. I spent enough time working with MPs to recognize law enforcement patterns." His eyes narrowed. "So I'll ask again, what happened out there, Officer Bennett? And don't tell me it was just a car accident." Laura weighed her options. She could lie, make up some story, try to get out of here as soon as possible, but Ethan had saved her life. He deserved the truth. More than that, if Reeves's people came looking, and they would eventually, he deserved to know what kind of danger he might be in. "I'm a detective with the Frost Valley Police Department," she said slowly. 3 weeks ago, I uncovered evidence of corruption within the department. Drug trafficking, evidence tampering, money laundering. I went to my captain with what I'd found, and tonight that same captain tried to have me killed. Ethan was quiet for a long moment, processing this. When he spoke, his voice was carefully neutral. "That's a serious accusation." "I know." "Do you have proof?" "I did. I had files, copies of everything. They were in my car." Laura felt a wave of despair wash over her. "They're at the bottom of the river now." "Backups?" "At home. But they'll have already searched my place. They'll have taken everything." Another long silence. Then Ethan moved to a small desk in the corner of the room, pulled out a laptop and opened it. "What are you doing?" Laura asked. "Checking something?" His fingers flew over the keyboard. After a minute, he turned the screen toward her. "This you?" It was a news article dated 3 months ago. The headline read, "Frost Valley Detective Honored for Bravery in Domestic Hostage Situation." Below was a photo of Laura in her dress uniform, shaking hands with the mayor, while Captain Reeves stood in the background, smiling. "Yeah," Laura said. "That's me." Ethan studied her face, then looked back at the screen, comparing. Finally, he closed the laptop. "Okay," he said. "I believe you." Just like that? I'm a pretty good judge of character. Had to be in my line of work. You're telling the truth. He sat down on the floor across from her. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to stay here tonight. In the morning, when you've recovered some strength, we'll figure out your next move. Contact the FBI, state police, whoever you need to contact to blow this thing wide open. But right now, you need rest. I can't put you in danger. If they find me here, this cabin isn't in my name, Ethan said. I inherited it from my father-in-law after he passed. Far as public records show, it belongs to a trust. Unless your corrupt cops are also expert skip tracers, they won't connect it to me. And even if they did, they don't know you're here. They think you drowned. Laura wanted to argue, to insist that she couldn't risk involving civilians, especially a man with a young daughter. But exhaustion was pulling at her like a physical weight, and the warmth of the fire and blankets was making it hard to think clearly. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. Ethan was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft. "My wife was killed 3 years ago, hit-and-run driver. The cops investigated for maybe a week before deciding it was unsolvable and moving on. I spent months trying to get them to take another look, to actually do their jobs. They didn't want to be bothered." His jaw tightened. "So yeah, I've got some issues with lazy cops, but I don't have any issues with good cops who are trying to do the right thing and getting punished for it. You stuck your neck out. Now, someone's trying to cut it off. That doesn't sit right with me." Before Laura could respond, Ranger suddenly stood up, ears perked forward. A low growl rumbled in his chest. Ethan was on his feet instantly, moving to the window again. His hand moved to his hip, to where a weapon would have been if he'd been wearing his holster, Laura realized. "What is it?" Laura whispered. "Headlights." Ethan's voice was tense. "Coming up the access road." Laura's heart began to pound. "How many?" "2 vehicles, moving slow, searching." He turned from the window. "How much do you trust me, Officer Bennett?" "Under the circumstances? Not much of a choice." "Fair enough." Ethan strode across the room and pulled up a corner of the braided rug Laura was lying on. Beneath it was a trapdoor cut into the floor. "Root cellar. Doubles as a safe room. It's insulated, soundproofed, and opens to a tunnel that leads about 50 yards into the woods. There's emergency supplies down there, including clothes and boots. If anything happens, you take that tunnel and run." Laura stared at the hidden door. "You built an escape tunnel?" "I told you, I used to be a soldier. Old habits." He hauled the trapdoor open, revealing a ladder leading down into darkness. "Can you climb?" Everything in Laura's body was screaming at her to stay by the warm fire, to rest, to sleep, but survival instinct overrode exhaustion. "I can climb." "Good. Lily's room is right above the cellar. If I need to, I'll get her down to you, but hopefully it won't come to that. Hopefully they're just canvassing the area and will move on." Laura gathered the blankets around her and, moving on shaky legs, made her way to the trapdoor. The ladder was sturdy, and she descended carefully, favoring her sprained wrist. When she reached the bottom, she found herself in a surprisingly spacious underground room. Battery-powered lanterns hung from hooks on the walls, and she could see shelves stocked with canned goods, water, first aid supplies, and other emergency gear. Ethan appeared at the top of the ladder holding Laura's duty belt, which he'd removed with her wet clothes. "You might want this," he said, lowering it down to her. "Your radio and your weapon are probably shot after the river, but better to have them than not." Laura caught the belt, feeling the weight of her service weapon. She pulled it from its holster, ejected the magazine, and checked the chamber. Water streamed out. Ethan was right. The gun would need to be completely disassembled, cleaned, and dried before it would fire again. But it was still better than nothing. "Thank you," she said, looking up at him. "Don't thank me yet. Just stay quiet and stay ready." Ethan began to lower the trapdoor. "And Officer Bennett, if something happens to me, you get Lily out of here. Promise me." "I promise." The trapdoor closed with a soft thud, plunging the cellar into near darkness, broken only by the dim glow of the lanterns. Laura heard the sound of the rug being dragged back into place above her head. Then silence. Laura found a wooden crate and sat down, wrapping the blankets tightly around herself. Her body was still recovering from the hypothermia, still shaking with occasional tremors. But adrenaline was keeping her alert now, keeping her focused. She checked her duty belt. Her radio was indeed dead, water having seeped into the electronics. Her handcuffs were still there, as was her baton and pepper spray. Small mercies. In the cargo pocket of her pants, which Ethan had hung to dry near the fire, was her phone. If it still worked, it might be her lifeline to the outside world. But first, she had to survive the next few minutes. Above her head, she heard footsteps. Ethan moving through the cabin. Then came the sound of the front door opening, and then voices, muffled by the floor and insulation but audible, began filtering down to the cellar. "Evening?" That was Ethan, his voice calm and conversational. "Can I help you, officers?" "Sorry to disturb you this late," a man's voice, unfamiliar to Laura. "We're searching for a vehicle that may have crashed in the area. Black and white police cruiser. You seen anything like that?" "A police cruiser? No, can't say I have. Then again, I've been inside most of the evening. What happened?" "That's what we're trying to figure out." A second voice now, also male. The officer was responding to a call when she went off the radar. "We're worried she might have had an accident given the road conditions." "Huh. Well, I hope she's all right." Ethan sounded genuinely concerned. "Like I said, I haven't seen anything, but I'll keep an eye out." "You live here alone?" The first voice again, and now there was a note of suspicion in it. "Me and my daughter. She's asleep in her room. It's a school night. Mind if we take a look around?" Silence. Laura's heart was hammering so hard she was sure they'd be able to hear it even through the insulated floor. "You got a warrant?" Ethan's voice had changed, gone harder, flatter. "We're not trying to cause trouble, sir. We're just trying to find our fellow officer." "Then you won't mind coming back with a warrant." Ethan's tone left no room for argument. "I'm sympathetic to your situation, officers, but this is private property. You want to search it? Bring me a warrant signed by a judge." "Sir?" "Have a good night, officers." The door closed with a firm thud. Laura waited, barely breathing, as the minutes ticked by. She heard footsteps again, heard the murmur of voices outside, heard the sound of vehicles starting up. Then, finally, silence. It felt like an eternity before the trapdoor opened again. Ethan's face appeared above her, illuminated by the firelight behind him. "They're gone," he said. "For now." Laura climbed back up the ladder, her legs shaking from more than just cold now. When she reached the top, she found Lily standing in the doorway of her bedroom, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Dad? What's happening? Who was here?" Ethan crossed to his daughter and scooped her up in his arms. "Nothing for you to worry about, sweetheart. Just some people who got lost. They're gone now." "Is Officer Laura okay?" "I'm okay," Laura said, though she wasn't entirely sure that was true. Lily looked at her with those wide, solemn eyes. "Are those men bad guys? The ones Dad was talking to?" Out of the mouths of babes, Laura thought. Kids always knew when something was wrong, even when adults tried to hide it. "I don't know, honey," Laura said honestly. "Maybe. But your dad sent them away, so we're safe now." "For tonight," Ethan corrected quietly. "But they'll be back, warrant or no warrant, and next time they might bring more people." He was right. Laura knew he was right. Reeves wasn't going to give up that easily. If he'd gone this far to silence her, he'd go further still. She needed a plan, needed to figure out her next move, needed to get evidence to someone who could do something about it, someone outside Reeves' sphere of influence. But first, she needed to survive the night. "Get some rest," Ethan said, seeming to read her thoughts. "Both of you, we'll figure out the next step in the morning." Lily yawned hugely. "Can Officer Laura sleep in my room? I don't want her to be lonely." Despite everything, the fear, the exhaustion, the knowledge that corrupt cops were hunting her, Laura felt her heart warm at the child's simple kindness. "I'll be fine out here," she said. "But thank you, Lily." "You can have the couch," Ethan said. "It's comfortable enough. I'll keep watch." "You need to sleep too." "I'll sleep when you're safe." There was finality in his voice that brooked no argument. So Laura curled up on the couch, wrapped in warm blankets, with a German shepherd lying on the floor beside her like a furry guard. Through the window, she could see snow still falling, covering the world in white. Somewhere out there, Captain Reeves and his people were searching for her. Somewhere out there, a conspiracy was unfolding that went deeper than she'd imagined. Somewhere out there, justice was waiting to be served. But here, in this small cabin in the woods, with a stranger who'd risked everything to save her and his daughter, who'd welcomed her with open arms, Laura felt something she hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. Her last thought before exhaustion finally claimed her was that tomorrow everything would change. She had no idea how right she was. Laura woke to the smell of coffee and bacon, and for one disoriented moment she couldn't remember where she was. Then the events of the previous night came rushing back. The chase, the crash, the freezing water, the impossibly strong hands pulling her to safety. She sat up slowly, every muscle in her body protesting. Her left wrist was wrapped in an elastic bandage that hadn't been there when she fell asleep. Someone, Ethan presumably, had tended to it while she slept. The thought should have been unsettling, but somehow it wasn't. Morning light streamed through the cabin windows, illuminating dust motes that danced in the air. Outside, the world was blanketed in fresh snow that sparkled like diamonds in the sun. It would have been beautiful if Laura hadn't known that same snow would make it easy for anyone to track footprints to this cabin. "You're awake." Ethan appeared from the kitchen area holding a steaming mug. "Coffee?" "God, yes." Laura's voice came out raspy. Her throat was raw from coughing up river water. Ethan handed her the mug, and she wrapped both hands around it, savoring the warmth. He'd changed clothes since last night. Gone were the wet jeans and flannel shirt, replaced by clean cargo pants and a thermal Henley that emphasized his broad shoulders. His dark hair was still damp from a shower. "How are you feeling?" he asked, settling into an armchair across from the couch. "Like I got hit by a truck, but alive, so I'm not complaining." Laura took a sip of coffee. It was strong and black, exactly what she needed. "Thank you for everything. I don't think I said that properly last night." "You were a little busy not dying of hypothermia." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "Your color's better this morning. Last night you were practically blue." "Where's Lily?" "Still asleep. I let her stay home from school today. Didn't want her out of my sight, given the circumstances." That made sense. If Reeves' people came back, if they somehow figured out Laura was here, a 7-year-old girl could become a liability, or worse, leverage. Laura set down her coffee mug, suddenly nauseous at the thought. "I need to leave, today. I've already put you and your daughter in enough danger." "And go where?" Ethan's voice was reasonable, but his eyes were sharp. "Your car is at the bottom of the river. Your department thinks you're dead, or wants you dead. You have no backup, no evidence, and from what you told me last night, no idea who you can trust. I can contact the FBI or state police, someone outside Frost Valley. With what phone? Yours took a swim with you. Mine is a burner with limited minutes. And even if you did make contact, how long before word gets back to your captain that you're alive? How long before whoever he's working with finds you?" Laura hated that he was right, but he was. She'd spent half the night, the parts when she wasn't unconscious, thinking through her options. They were all bad. "I have a contact," she said finally, "a friend from the academy. She works for the state police now, out of the capital. If I could get to her, if I could tell her what's happening, she'd help me." "How far?" 3 hours, maybe 4 in this weather." Ethan was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then he stood and moved to the window, scanning the tree line with the careful attention of someone trained to spot threats. "The access road is the only way in or out by vehicle," he said. "If they're smart, and I'm betting they are, they'll have someone watching it. Maybe not permanently, but checking it periodically. We'd be spotted before we made it half a mile. So I go on foot, through the woods. In your condition, in this cold, you'd last maybe an hour before hypothermia set in again. And that's assuming you could navigate 3 hours of hiking through unmarked forest in the snow." He turned from the window to look at her. "I'm not trying to be difficult, Officer Bennett. I'm being realistic. You're hurt, you're exhausted, and you have no gear. You need time to recover before you can make any kind of run for it." Laura wanted to argue, wanted to insist that she couldn't stay here, couldn't put this family at risk, but her body was already telling her that Ethan was right. Just the effort of sitting up and drinking coffee had left her feeling drained. "How long?" she asked quietly. "Today. Maybe tomorrow. Let your body recover. Let me see if I can scout out the access road, figure out if they're watching it. Then we'll come up with a plan." It wasn't ideal, but it was better than stumbling into the woods and dying of exposure before she made it a mile. Okay, Laura said, but if they come back, we use the tunnel. You, me, and Lily. We disappear into the woods and make our way to the highway. I've got a cache hidden out there with supplies, money, and a vehicle stashed at a storage facility about 2 miles away. Not registered in my name. Laura stared at him. You really thought this through? I told you, old habits. When you've been in situations where one mistake means you don't come home, you learn to plan for every contingency. Ethan moved back to his chair and sat down, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. My wife used to say I was paranoid. Maybe I was. But after she died, after dealing with cops who didn't give a damn about finding the person who killed her, I decided it was better to be paranoid and alive than trusting and dead. There was pain in his voice when he mentioned his wife. Old pain, but still deep. Laura wanted to ask what happened, wanted to know more about the woman who'd married this careful, competent man and given him a daughter with curious brown eyes. But it wasn't her place to pry. I'm sorry, she said instead. About your wife. Ethan nodded once, accepting the condolence without elaborating. Then he stood again. You should eat something. Bacon, eggs, toast. Nothing fancy, but it's hot. You need to keep your strength up. Laura's stomach rumbled at the mention of food. She couldn't remember the last time she'd eaten, probably lunch yesterday before her shift started, before her world turned upside down. She followed Ethan into the kitchen area, moving slowly. Her left leg had a massive bruise on the thigh, probably from the impact when the cruiser hit the ice, and each step sent a dull ache through her hip. Her ribs hurt too, legacy of the seatbelt and airbag. She'd be feeling this crash for weeks. The cabin's interior was small but well organized. The main room served as living room and dining area, with the kitchen along one wall. 2 doors led off to what were presumably bedrooms, and a third door stood partially open, revealing a small bathroom. Everything was clean and neat, though not sterile. There were signs of life everywhere. Lily's drawing stuck to the refrigerator with magnets, a stack of library books on the coffee table, a child's pink snow boots by the door next to Ethan's larger black ones. It was a home, a real home, where a father was doing his best to raise his daughter alone. And Laura had brought danger to their doorstep. Ethan loaded a plate with scrambled eggs and bacon and set it in front of her at the small dining table. He'd already set out toast and butter, a jar of homemade jam that looked like it had come from someone's basement canning operation. Eat, he said. Then we need to talk about what happens next. Laura ate, and the food was simple but delicious. Or maybe she was just starving. Either way, she cleaned her plate and was reaching for toast when she heard a small voice from one of the bedrooms. Dad, is it time to get up? Yeah, kiddo, come on out. Lily emerged from her room wearing the same star and moon pajamas from last night, her dark hair sticking up in several directions. She looked sleep-rumpled and adorable. When she saw Laura, her face lit up. You're still here. I thought maybe you left in the night like a ninja. Despite everything, Laura found herself smiling. Nope, still here, though I'm probably not coordinated enough to be a ninja right now. Dad says you almost died. Is that true? Lily, Ethan said with a warning note. It's okay, Laura said. Yeah, honey, it's true. I almost died. But your dad and Ranger saved me. Lily climbed into a chair next to Laura, looking at her with that intense, unfiltered curiosity that only children possess. Why did you crash your car? Were you chasing bad guys? Something like that. Are the bad guys still out there? Laura glanced at Ethan, who was watching his daughter with an expression that was equal parts love and concern. He gave a small nod, as if to say, Your call. Tell her as much or as little as you want. Yeah, Laura said honestly. The bad guys are still out there. That's why I need to be careful. Are you going to catch them? I'm going to try. Lily considered this, then nodded decisively. Good. Bad guys should go to jail. That's what Dad says. He says people who hurt other people need to have consequences. She pronounced the last word carefully, like she'd been practicing it. Your dad is a smart man. He's the smartest man in the whole world, Lily declared loyally. He knows everything. Well, almost everything. He doesn't know how to braid hair very well. His braids always come out crooked, but he's trying to learn. Ethan's ears had turned slightly red. Thanks for that, Lily. Why don't you go get dressed? You can help me with breakfast dishes. Okay. Lily hopped down from her chair and scampered back to her room, apparently completely unbothered by the fact that there was a strange police officer in her house who was being hunted by bad guys. Once she was gone, Ethan shook his head. Sorry about that. She doesn't really have a filter. She's wonderful, Laura said, and meant it. How long has it been since your wife passed? 3 years this February. Ethan started clearing the breakfast dishes. Car accident, hit and run. Driver was never caught. I'm so sorry. Me too. He ran water in the sink, his back to Laura. Lily was 4, old enough to know her mom was gone, not old enough to really understand death. She still talks about Sarah sometimes, tells me stories about what they'll do when Mommy comes home. Laura's throat tightened. That must be hard. It is, but I don't have the luxury of falling apart. Lily needs me. So I get up every day and I take care of my daughter, and I do the best I can. He turned from the sink and his eyes were fierce. Which is why I need you to understand something, Officer Bennett. I will help you. I will do what I can to keep you safe and help you bring down these corrupt cops. But if it comes down to a choice between your mission and my daughter's safety, Lily wins. Every single time. No debate. Are we clear? Crystal clear, Laura said. And I wouldn't expect anything else. Your daughter comes first. Always. Ethan studied her face for a moment, then nodded. Good. Then we understand each other. Lily emerged from her room wearing jeans and a sweatshirt with a unicorn on it. I'm ready to help with dishes. Then come on, kiddo, you wash, I'll dry. Laura watched them work together, the easy rhythm of a father and daughter who'd learned to be a team. Lily chattered nonstop about her school friends, about a book she was reading, about how Ranger had stolen a piece of bacon off her plate last week when she wasn't looking. Ethan listened and responded, asking questions, laughing at the right moments, fully present with his daughter, even though Laura knew his mind had to be racing with the same concerns that were plaguing her. This was what good parenting looked like. This was a man who'd suffered tremendous loss and somehow found the strength to keep going for his child's sake. Laura felt a fierce determination settle in her chest. She would not let Reeves and his thugs hurt this family. She would not let the corruption that had nearly killed her spread to infect these good people. She would fight. And she would win. After dishes were done, Ethan set Lily up with coloring books at the dining table and gestured for Laura to follow him outside. She grabbed one of his heavy winter coats from a hook by the door. Her own jacket was still damp and reeked of river water. The cold hit her like a slap when she stepped outside, making her gasp. It couldn't have been more than 20 degrees, and the wind cut through the borrowed coat like it wasn't even there. We won't stay out long, Ethan said, but I want you to see the layout. Know your exits if things go south. He led her around the perimeter of the cabin, pointing out landmarks. The access road that wound down the mountain toward the main highway. The tree line where the forest pressed in close. The frozen stream that ran behind the property. The tunnel from the cellar comes out there, he said, pointing to a spot about 50 yards into the woods. It's camouflaged with a fake stump. Even if someone was looking for it, they'd have a hard time finding it. You really did think of everything. I had time. And motivation. He glanced back at the cabin, where they could see Lily's small figure through the window, bent over her coloring books. After Sarah died, after the cops gave up on finding who killed her, I started thinking about worst-case scenarios. What if whoever hit her came back? What if it wasn't an accident but something deliberate? What if I needed to protect Lily from something I couldn't see coming? You think your wife's death wasn't an accident? Ethan was quiet for a long moment. I don't know. The cops said it was a drunk driver, probably someone passing through who panicked and ran. But Sarah was careful. She always looked both ways, even in parking lots. And the damage to her car, it looked like she'd been hit from behind, pushed into traffic. But when I tried to get the police to investigate that angle, they shut me down. Said I was grasping at straws, looking for conspiracy theories because I couldn't accept that accidents happen. Maybe they were right, Laura said gently. Not about shutting you down. That was wrong. But sometimes accidents are just accidents. Maybe. But he didn't sound convinced. Anyway, that's when I started preparing, built the tunnel, Set up the cache in the woods, made sure I had escape routes and backup plans. Sarah used to joke that I never really left the army. She was right. They continued walking the perimeter with Ethan pointing out more details. Where the property line was. Which trees would provide the best cover if they needed to move through the forest. Where the nearest neighbor lived, almost 2 miles away, an elderly man who kept to himself and probably wouldn't notice or care about activity at Ethan's place. I'm going to scout the access road this afternoon, Ethan said as they headed back toward the cabin. See if they're watching it. If the coast is clear, maybe we can risk a drive down to the highway tomorrow. But if they're watching, and my gut says they are, we'll need to use the tunnel and go on foot. I can be ready tomorrow, Laura said. I just need to rest today, let my body recover. There's something else we need to discuss. Ethan stopped walking and turned to face her. Your captain. You said he's part of the drug operation. Do you know how deep this goes? How many people in your department are involved? Laura thought about the evidence she'd gathered, the names she'd seen in the files. At least a dozen officers, maybe more. It's hard to say. I didn't get far enough in my investigation to map the whole network. But Reeves is definitely at the center of it. And if he's got control of dispatch, if he can send people after me without it raising red flags, that suggests he has support from higher up, maybe even the chief. Ethan swore softly. So we can't trust anyone in your department. No. That's why I need to get to my friend at State Police. She's clean, I'm sure of it, and she has the connections to kick this up to the FBI. What about the evidence? You said it went down with your car. I have copies at home. But like I said, they've probably already searched my place and taken everything. What about digital copies, cloud storage? Laura felt a surge of hope, followed immediately by crushing disappointment. I uploaded some files to a secure server, but I need my login credentials to access them, and those are on my home computer. What kind of server? Department server, encrypted. Ethan's expression turned thoughtful. Could you access it from another computer if you had your credentials? Yes, but I don't have... Laura stopped. Wait, are you saying you can get my credentials? I'm saying I know someone who might be able to help. Former Army, works in cybersecurity now. Owes me a favor from our deployment days. If we can get him your information, badge number, personal details, anything that might be used in password recovery, he might be able to crack into your account. It was a long shot, but it was better than nothing. It's worth a try, Laura said. They went back inside where Lily had apparently finished with coloring and moved on to building an elaborate structure out of wooden blocks. Ranger was lying nearby, watching the construction with the patient attention of a dog, who knew that eventually, inevitably, the blocks would fall and he would be asked to help clean them up. I'm building a castle, Lily announced. Want to help, Officer Laura? Sure, honey. Laura settled onto the floor next to the little girl, and for the next hour she helped build block castles and listened to Lily's running commentary about which princess lived in which tower and how the dragon was actually friendly and just wanted to be invited to tea parties. It was surreal. Less than 24 hours ago, Laura had been fighting for her life in a frozen river. Now she was playing blocks with a 7-year-old while her father researched escape routes, and her corrupt captain probably had people combing the valley for her body. But there was something healing about it too. Something grounding about this child's simple joy in building and imagining. Lily didn't know about the darkness in the world, about corruption and betrayal, and people who would kill to protect their secrets. In her world, dragons wanted to be friends, and castles had happy princesses, and everything always worked out in the end. Laura found herself hoping desperately that Lily would never have to learn differently. That whatever happened in the next few days, this child would remain safe and innocent and untouched by the ugliness that Laura had brought to her doorstep. Around noon, Ethan made sandwiches for lunch. As they ate, he laid out his plan. I'll head down the access road around 2 o'clock. That's when the lunch crowd at the diner in town will be heaviest. If they've got someone watching the road, they might get sloppy, might take a break to grab food. I'll see what I can see, then come back and report. What about Lily? Laura asked. She stays here with you, Ranger too. If anything happens, if anyone comes, tunnel. I remember. Good. Ethan looked at his daughter. Lily, honey, I need you to listen very carefully. While I'm gone, Officer Laura is in charge. If she tells you to do something, you do it immediately. No questions, no arguments. Understand? Lily's eyes went wide and solemn. Is this about the bad guys? It's about keeping everyone safe. Can you do that for me? I can do that. That's my girl. Ethan reached over and ruffled her hair. I'll be back in a couple of hours. Probably nothing will happen, but just in case. Laura's stomach was in knots as she watched Ethan prepare to leave. He strapped on a shoulder holster. Laura caught a glimpse of a Sig Sauer P226, the same model she'd carried in the army, and pulled on a heavy winter parka. He grabbed a backpack that looked like it was already packed with supplies. Stay away from the windows, he said to Laura. Keep Ranger with you. He's trained to alert on vehicles and people approaching. If his ears go up and he growls someone's coming, don't wait to see who it is. Just get Lily and head for the cellar. I will. And Laura? He met her eyes. If something happens to me out there, if I don't come back, you take my daughter and you run. Don't try to be a hero. Don't try to save me. Just get Lily somewhere safe. Nothing's going to happen to you. Probably not. But if it does, I need to know my daughter will be okay. Laura understood what he was asking, what he needed to hear. I'll protect her with my life, I promise. Ethan nodded once, then bent down to hug Lily. Be good for Officer Laura. I'll be back soon. Bye, Daddy. Be careful. Then he was gone, the door closing behind him with a soft click that somehow sounded final. Laura moved to the window and watched as Ethan climbed into a battered pickup truck that had been parked on the far side of the cabin. The engine turned over after a moment of protest, and then he was driving down the access road, disappearing into the trees. Want to play another game? Lily asked from behind her. Laura turned from the window. Sure. What do you want to play? Hide and seek. I'm really good at hiding. I bet you are. But maybe we should play something else, something where we can stay in the same room. Why? Because I need to keep you in my sight at all times in case we have to run for our lives, Laura thought. But what she said was, because I'm still pretty sore from my accident. Hard for me to walk around looking for you. How about we play a card game instead? I know Go Fish. Go Fish it is. They settled at the dining table with a worn deck of cards. Ranger took up position at Laura's feet, his head on his paws, but his eyes alert. Every few minutes his ears would twitch, tracking some sound outside that Laura couldn't hear. Each time her heart would skip a beat, but the dog would settle again without growling. False alarms. Just forest sounds. Nothing to worry about. They played cards for an hour. Then Lily wanted to read, so Laura listened as the little girl worked her way through a picture book about a mouse who wanted to go to the moon. Lily was a good reader for 7, stumbling only occasionally over longer words. The afternoon dragged on. 2 o'clock came and went. Then 3. Laura tried not to look at the clock on the wall, tried not to imagine worst-case scenarios. Ethan was fine. He was just being thorough, checking the road carefully before heading back. But by 3:30, Laura's nerves were starting to fray. When is Daddy coming home? Lily asked, apparently picking up on Laura's tension. Soon, honey. He said a couple of hours, remember? It's been a couple of hours. Smart kid. Well, sometimes things take longer than we expect. I'm sure he's fine. But was he? What if Reeves' people had caught him? What if they'd been watching the road and recognized him as the man who lived in the cabin? What if right now they were interrogating him, trying to find out where Laura was? Laura forced herself to take a deep breath. She was catastrophizing. Ethan was a trained soldier, careful and competent. He knew how to scout enemy territory. He'd be fine. At 4 o'clock, Ranger suddenly lifted his head. His ears swiveled forward, focusing on something outside. A low growl rumbled in his chest. Laura was on her feet instantly. Lily, go to your room and grab your warmest coat. Put on your boots. Do it now. To her credit, Lily didn't argue or ask questions. She just ran to her room, moving with the speed that only children can muster when they sense danger. Laura moved to the window and risked a quick glance outside. At first she saw nothing, just trees and snow and the empty access road. Then she caught a flash of movement, dark shapes moving through the forest, converging on the cabin from multiple directions. Not vehicles this time. Men on foot. And they were trying to surround the cabin. Laura's mind raced. How many? She'd seen at least 4, maybe more. Were they police? Probably some of them. maybe all of them. It didn't matter. What mattered was that they were here, and Ethan wasn't, and she had about 90 seconds before they reached the cabin. "Lily!" she called, keeping her voice calm despite the fear coursing through her veins. "Are you ready?" "Yes!" Lily emerged from her room bundled in a pink parka, her feet crammed into her snow boots. "Good girl. Come here. Quick and quiet." Laura pulled up the rug and hauled open the trap door. "Down the ladder. Ranger, come." The dog didn't hesitate. He scrambled down the ladder with surprising grace for an animal his size. Lily followed, and Laura brought up the rear, pulling the trapdoor closed above them, just as she heard Boots stomping up onto the cabin's front porch. In the cellar, illuminated by the battery-powered lanterns, Lily's eyes were huge and frightened. "Is it the bad guys?" "Yes," Laura said. "There was no point in lying. But we're going to be okay. Remember what your dad told you about the tunnel?" Lily nodded. "Good. We're going to use it right now. Stay close to me and stay quiet. Can you do that?" "I can do that." Laura found the tunnel entrance, a section of the wall that swung outward on hidden hinges. Beyond it was a narrow passage, maybe 4 feet high and 3 feet wide, with rough-hewn walls that looked like they'd been carved out by hand. Battery-powered LED strips ran along the ceiling, providing just enough light to see by. Above them, Laura heard the crash of the cabin door being kicked in. Heavy footsteps, voices shouting. "Go," she whispered to Lily. "Crawl as fast as you can. Don't stop until you reach the end." Lily dropped to her hands and knees and started crawling. Ranger went with her, his body pressed protectively against her side. Laura followed, pulling the hidden door closed behind them. The tunnel was cold and claustrophobic, but it was escape. Laura could hear the sounds of the cabin being searched above them, furniture being overturned, doors being slammed open. Someone shouted, "She's not here!" Another voice, this one horribly familiar even through the earth between them. "Then find her! Check the woods! She can't have gotten far!" Captain Reeves. He was here personally, which meant this wasn't just about silencing a loose end anymore. This was about sending a message, about making sure that anyone who even thought about crossing Reeves would know what happened to those who did. They reached the end of the tunnel. Laura pushed open the fake stump. Ethan had been right. It was perfectly camouflaged, and they emerged into the forest. The cold air hit like a physical blow after the relative warmth of the tunnel. "Stay low," Laura whispered to Lily. "Follow me." They moved through the trees, heading away from the cabin. Laura could hear shouting behind them, hear men crashing through the underbrush. They were searching, spreading out in a grid pattern like they'd been trained to do, because they had been trained. These were cops, her fellow officers, hunting her like an animal. Laura's sprained wrist was throbbing, and her bruised ribs screamed with every breath, but she pushed through the pain. They needed distance, needed to reach whatever cache Ethan had hidden in the woods. But where was it? He'd said it was out here, but he hadn't had time to tell her exactly where. How was she supposed to find it when she didn't even know where she was going? Lily tugged on her sleeve. "Officer Laura?" "Not now, honey. We need to keep moving." "But I know where Daddy's hiding spot is." Laura stopped. "What?" "His hiding spot, where he keeps the emergency stuff. He showed me once, in case something bad ever happened. I can take you there." Of course. Of course Ethan would have made sure his daughter knew where the cache was. It was exactly the kind of thorough planning that seemed to define him. "Okay," Laura said. "Lead the way, but quietly." Lily nodded and started moving through the forest with the confidence of a child who'd played in these woods her whole life. She led them on a winding path through the trees, occasionally stopping to get her bearings by looking at landmarks that meant nothing to Laura, but apparently meant everything to her. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit were getting closer. After what felt like an eternity but was probably only 10 minutes, Lily stopped at a massive fallen tree. "Here," she whispered. Laura looked around. She didn't see anything that looked like a cache. "Where?" "Under the tree. There's a hole. You have to move the branches." Laura pushed aside some dead branches and found a hollow space beneath the fallen trunk. Inside was a large waterproof bag. She pulled it out and opened it, and relief flooded through her. Clothes, first aid supplies, energy bars, water bottles, a flashlight, a compass, and thank God, a phone. Not a smartphone, just a basic flip phone, but it was something. And at the bottom of the bag, wrapped in waterproof plastic, was money. A lot of money. Maybe $5,000 in 20s and 50s. Ethan really had thought of everything. Laura was pulling on an extra jacket from the bag when Ranger suddenly went rigid. His hackles raised and a low, warning growl emerged from his throat. Someone was coming. Laura grabbed Lily and pulled her close, her hand automatically going to her duty belt where her useless, water-damaged gun still sat. But there was no time to try to fix it, no time to do anything but prepare to fight with her bare hands if necessary. A figure emerged from the trees, Laura's breath caught in her throat, ready to scream, ready to tell Lily to run. Then she saw who it was. Ethan. He was moving fast, his face grim. When he saw them, relief flashed across his features for just a moment before the hard mask settled back into place. "I heard them hit the cabin on my radio scanner," he said quietly, kneeling beside them. "I came back through the woods, didn't risk the road. Are you okay?" "We're fine," Laura said. "Lily knew where your cache was. She brought me here." Ethan pulled his daughter into a quick, fierce hug. "Smart girl. I'm so proud of you." "Daddy, I was brave just like you said. I didn't cry or nothing." "Anything," he corrected automatically. "And yes, you were incredibly brave." He looked at Laura over Lily's head. "They've got at least 8 men searching the woods. They're moving in an outward spiral from the cabin. We need to move now, get ahead of them." "Where?" "The storage facility where I keep the vehicle. It's about 2 miles northeast from here. If we can reach it before they expand their search grid, we might have a chance." "And if we can't?" Ethan's expression was grim. "Then we keep running until we either get away or we don't." It wasn't much of a plan, but it was all they had. They moved through the forest, Ethan leading the way with the practiced stealth of someone who'd moved through hostile territory before. Lily stayed between them, her small hand gripping her father's coat. Ranger ranged ahead, his ears constantly swiveling, alert for any sign of danger. The cold was brutal. Laura's borrowed coat helped, but her jeans were soaked from the snow, and her feet were going numb in her still damp boots. Beside her, Lily was shivering despite her warm parka. They needed shelter, needed warmth, but first they needed to survive the next hour. They'd been walking for maybe 20 minutes when Laura heard it. Voices, close, too close. Ethan heard it too. He held up a hand, signaling them to stop. They crouched behind a fallen log, barely breathing. 2 men walked past, maybe 30 yards away. Laura recognized one of them, Officer Jake Morrison, a beat cop who'd always seemed like a good guy. Someone she'd shared coffee with in the break room, joked with about the new traffic software. Now he was hunting her with a gun in his hand. "See anything?" Morrison asked his partner. "Nothing. Maybe they went a different direction. Reeves says they can't have gotten far. The woman's hurt and she's got a kid with her. They'll leave tracks." They kept walking, and after a minute their voices faded into the distance. Ethan touched Laura's arm and gestured for them to keep moving, but more carefully now. They stayed low, using the terrain for cover, moving from tree to tree. The storage facility appeared ahead of them like a mirage. It was small, just a few rows of garages along a poorly maintained road. There were no other vehicles in the parking area, no signs of recent activity. Ethan led them to the 3rd unit from the end. He produced a key from his pocket and unlocked the rolling door, then ushered them inside quickly before pulling it closed behind them. Inside was an old Jeep Cherokee, probably from the late 90s. It wasn't much to look at, but when Ethan turned the key in the ignition, it started immediately. "Everyone in," he said. They climbed into the vehicle, Lily in the back seat, Laura in the front passenger seat, Ranger sprawled across Lily's lap. Ethan hit the button for the automatic door opener and nothing happened. He swore under his breath and got out, manually hauling the rolling door up. Laura's heart was pounding. They were so close to getting away, just a few more seconds. Ethan jumped back into the driver's seat and threw the Jeep into reverse. They backed out of the storage unit and he swung them around, pointing toward the access road that led back to the highway. That's when Laura saw the black sedan blocking the exit, and Captain Reeves standing beside it, pointing a gun directly at them. Time seemed to freeze. Laura stared at Captain Reeves through the windshield, watching his finger tighten on the trigger, knowing they had maybe a second before he started shooting. "Get down!" Ethan shouted. He slammed the Jeep into drive and floored the accelerator, yanking the wheel hard to the right. The vehicle lurched forward just as Reeves fired. The bullet punched through the windshield exactly where Laura's head had been, a split second before, spiderwebbing the glass. "Hold on!" Ethan's voice was steel and ice as he aimed the Jeep not at the gap beside the sedan, but directly at the vehicle itself. They hit with a sickening crunch of metal. The Jeep's reinforced front bumper caught the sedan's rear quarter panel, sending it spinning out of the way. Reeves dove clear, rolling across the snowy pavement. Ethan didn't slow down. He kept the accelerator pressed to the floor, the Jeep's engine roaring as they shot past the spinning sedan and onto the access road. "Everybody okay?" Ethan's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror where Lily sat with her arms wrapped around Ranger, her face pale but determined. "I'm okay, Daddy," she said in a small voice. Laura twisted in her seat to look back. Reeves was already on his feet, shouting into a radio. The sedan had stalled out from the impact, but she could see other vehicles in the distance, converging on their position. "They're coming," she said. "I know." Ethan's knuckles were white on the steering wheel as he navigated the winding access road at speeds that were frankly suicidal in these conditions. The Jeep fishtailed around a curve, and he corrected smoothly, never lifting his foot from the accelerator. "How many cars did you see?" "At least 3, maybe more." "The highway's about 2 miles ahead. If we can reach it, we might be able to lose them in traffic." It was a slim hope. The rural highway that ran through this part of Frost Valley rarely had heavy traffic, especially in winter, but it was better than nothing. The Jeep's engine was straining, the speedometer climbing past 60 on a road that shouldn't be taken faster than 35. Trees blurred past on either side. The bullet hole in the windshield let in a constant stream of freezing air that made Laura's eyes water. Behind them, headlights appeared, multiple sets, closing fast. "They're gaining," Laura said. Ethan's jaw clenched, but he didn't respond. He was too focused on keeping them on the road, on navigating the treacherous curves at a speed that left no room for error. Lily was crying now, quiet sobs that she was trying to muffle against Ranger's fur. The dog stayed perfectly still, as if he understood that any movement might distract Ethan at a critical moment. Laura's hand went to her duty belt, to the waterlogged gun that she knew wouldn't fire. Useless. She was useless. A trained police officer, and she couldn't even defend a 7-year-old girl and her father. "There's a gun in the glove compartment," Ethan said, without taking his eyes off the road. "Glock 19, loaded, safety's on." Laura popped open the glove compartment and pulled out the weapon. It was exactly where he said it would be, exactly as he described it. She checked the magazine, chambered a round, clicked off the safety. The familiar weight of a working firearm in her hand was oddly comforting. "If they try to force us off the road," Ethan said, "you return fire. Aim for the tires if you can. Windshield if you can't." "I'm not shooting at police officers. They're not acting like police officers. They're acting like hitmen." His voice was hard. "And they just tried to kill all of us, including my daughter. So if it comes down to them or us, you shoot, understand?" Laura understood. More than that, she agreed. These men had crossed a line. They weren't cops anymore. They were criminals with badges. The first sedan caught up to them on a straightaway, pulling alongside on the left. Laura could see the passenger, a young officer whose name she couldn't remember, rolling down his window. "He's got a gun!" she shouted. Ethan yanked the wheel right, slamming the Jeep into the sedan's side. Metal shrieked against metal. The sedan swerved, the driver fighting for control, and fell back. But 2 more were coming up behind it. The highway appeared ahead, a 2-lane strip of asphalt that intersected with the access road. A stop sign marked the intersection. Ethan blew right through it, tires screaming as he made the turn onto the highway heading north. A semi-truck was approaching from the south, horn blaring as the Jeep cut across its path. For one heart-stopping moment, Laura thought they were going to collide, but Ethan threaded the needle with inches to spare. The truck's horn Dopplered past, followed by the screech of air brakes. The pursuing sedans weren't as lucky. The lead car tried to follow the Jeep's path and misjudged the timing. It clipped the truck's trailer, spinning out across both lanes in a shower of sparks and torn metal. The semi jackknifed, its trailer swinging across the highway like a massive barricade. The second and third sedans slammed on their brakes, but the icy road gave them no traction. They plowed into the trailer one after another, the crashes echoing across the valley. Ethan kept driving. In the rearview mirror, Laura saw the carnage receding behind them. She didn't see anyone moving in the wrecked vehicles. "Oh, God," she whispered. "Ethan, we have to go back. They might be hurt." "They tried to kill us," he said flatly. "And if we go back, they'll finish the job. Or the ones who aren't hurt will arrest me and take Lily into custody while they figure out what to do with you. Either way, my daughter ends up in danger. So no, we're not going back." He was right. Laura hated that he was right. Hated that her training and her instincts were screaming at her to stop and render aid, while her survival instinct was screaming even louder to keep running. "Are the bad guys gone?" Lily asked in a tiny voice. "For now, sweetheart," Ethan said, his voice gentler when he spoke to his daughter. "For now, they're gone." They drove in silence for several miles, putting distance between themselves and the crash site. Ethan kept checking the mirrors, watching for pursuit, but the road behind them stayed empty. Eventually, he pulled off onto a side road, then onto an even smaller dirt track that wound up into the hills. After about a mile, he stopped in a small clearing surrounded by dense forest. "We need to switch vehicles," he said. "They'll have the Jeep's plates by now. We're too easy to spot." "Switch to what?" Laura asked, looking around at the empty forest. "Give me a minute." Ethan pulled out the burner phone from his pocket and dialed a number from memory. The call was answered on the second ring. "Yeah, it's me," Ethan said. "I need to call in that favor." "No, it can't wait. I'm about 8 miles north of Frost Valley on Highway 17, dirt road heading east at mile marker 53. I need a vehicle, something clean, and I need it in the next hour." He paused, listening. "I know what I'm asking. Yes, I'm sure." "Okay. Thanks, brother." He hung up and turned to Laura. "We wait here. My contact will bring us something we can use." "Who's your contact?" "Guy I served with in Afghanistan. He runs a used car lot now, mostly deals in cash sales, doesn't ask questions. He'll help us." Laura nodded, too tired to argue. Her adrenaline was crashing, leaving her feeling hollowed out and shaky. Every injury from the past 24 hours was making itself known. Her wrist throbbed, her ribs ached, and her head was pounding where she'd hit it during the crash. Beside her, Lily had finally stopped crying. She sat in the back seat with her arms around Ranger, staring at nothing. The blank look on her face terrified Laura more than the tears had. "Lily," Laura said softly, turning in her seat. "Hey, sweetheart. You okay?" "I want to go home," Lily whispered. "I want my room and my toys, and I want everything to be normal again." Ethan reached back and took his daughter's hand. "I know, baby, I know, and we will go home, I promise. But right now we need to be somewhere else for a little while." Why are those people so mean? Why do they want to hurt Officer Laura? Because Officer Laura is trying to stop them from doing bad things. And sometimes when you stand up to bad people, they try to hurt you. But that doesn't mean you should stop standing up. It means you have to be smarter and stronger and braver than they are. Is that what you did in the Army? Stand up to bad people? Yeah, kiddo, that's exactly what I did. Lily thought about this for a moment. Then she looked at Laura with those solemn brown eyes. Are you going to keep standing up to them? Laura met the child's gaze and saw not just fear there, but trust. This little girl believed that Laura was a hero, someone who would make things right. The weight of that trust was almost crushing. Yes, Laura said, I'm going to stop them, I promise. Good. Lily nodded decisively, then burrowed back into Ranger's fur. They waited in the clearing for 45 minutes. The sun was starting to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The temperature was dropping fast, and without the engine running, the Jeep was quickly becoming an icebox. Ethan had them huddled together in the back seat for warmth, with Ranger sprawled across their laps like a furry blanket. They ate energy bars from the emergency kit and drank water that was so cold it hurt Laura's teeth. What's the plan? Laura asked quietly, speaking over Lily's head. The little girl had finally dozed off, exhausted by fear and adrenaline crash. Get to a safe location, somewhere they won't think to look. Then we figure out how to get you in contact with your friend at state police without tipping off Reeves. He'll be monitoring all police channels. If I call any official number, he'll know. So we don't use official channels. We use the phone I gave you from the cache. It's a burner, untraceable. We find your friend's personal cell number and call her directly. I don't know her personal number. It would be in my phone, which is at the bottom of the river. Ethan was quiet for a moment. What's her name? Sarah Chen. She works out of the state police barracks in the capital. Okay, my contact might be able to find her number. He's got connections, ways of getting information without leaving a trail. Laura wanted to ask what kind of connections, what kind of man Ethan had been in the army that he had these resources available. But maybe it was better not to know. Maybe it was enough that he was using them to help her. Headlights appeared on the dirt road. Ethan immediately tensed, his hand going to the gun at his hip, but then he relaxed. It's okay. That's him. A battered pickup truck pulled into the clearing. The driver was a big man, easily 6'4", with a shaved head and a thick beard. He climbed out and immediately pulled Ethan into a bear hug. Cole, you crazy bastard. What kind of trouble have you gotten yourself into? The kind that needs discretion, Marcus. Marcus's eyes swept over the Jeep, taking in the bullet hole in the windshield, the damage to the front bumper. Then he looked at Laura and Lily, and his expression sobered. This is serious. Deadly serious. Okay. Marcus reached into his truck and pulled out a set of keys. 2008 Honda Accord. Clean title. Registered to a shell company I set up for exactly this kind of situation. Tank's full. Maintenance is up to date. It'll get you where you need to go without attracting attention. Where is it? About a quarter mile down the road. Couldn't drive it all the way up here. Didn't want to leave tracks in case someone's following you. He handed over the keys. There's cash in the glove box. $5,000. It's all I could grab on short notice. Marcus, I can't. Shut up and take it. You saved my ass in Kandahar. This doesn't even come close to repaying that debt. Marcus glanced at Lily again, and his voice softened. Besides, you've got your little girl to think about. Whatever this is, whoever you're running from, you keep her safe. That's all that matters. Ethan's throat worked. Thank you, brother. Don't mention it. Seriously, don't mention it. I was never here. I didn't see you. I don't know where you're going. And if anyone asks, this conversation never happened. Understood. Marcus climbed back into his truck. Before he drove away, he rolled down his window. Cole? That phone number you asked about? Sarah Chen? I'll text it to your burner in an hour, and I'll include a secure location where you can lay low for a few days. Friend of mine runs a hunting cabin about 80 miles from here. He owes me. He won't ask questions. You're a lifesaver. Yeah, well, don't make me regret it. Marcus grinned. And when this is all over, you're buying me the biggest steak dinner you can afford. Deal. The pickup truck rumbled away, leaving them alone in the gathering darkness. Ethan gently shook Lily awake. Come on, baby. We need to move to a different car. Lily blinked sleepily. Where are we going? Somewhere safe, somewhere the bad guys can't find us. They transferred their meager supplies to the Honda, a nondescript silver sedan that looked like a million other cars on the road. Ethan wiped down the Jeep, removing any fingerprints, then led them down the dirt road to where Marcus had left the Honda. The sedan was exactly as promised, clean, maintained, anonymous. They piled in, with Lily and Ranger in the back seat again, and headed back out to the highway. Night had fully fallen now. The dashboard clock read 6:15. Somewhere back in Frost Valley, Reeves was probably organizing a manhunt. He'd have found the crashed Jeep by now, would know they'd escaped. He'd be furious, desperate, and that made him even more dangerous. But they had a head start. And they had help, thanks to Marcus. It wasn't much, but it was something. Ethan drove north, keeping to the speed limit, being careful not to attract attention. They passed through small towns that were already buttoned up for the night, windows glowing warm against the cold darkness. After about an hour, the burner phone chirped. Ethan pulled over at a gas station and checked the message while Laura pumped gas, and Lily took Ranger for a quick walk. When they got back in the car, Ethan's expression was grim but determined. Marcus came through. He got Sarah Chen's personal cell number. And the location of that hunting cabin, it's about another hour north, up in the mountains. Remote, off the grid, perfect place to hide while we figure out our next move. Did he say how he got Sarah's number? I didn't ask, and he didn't volunteer. Sometimes it's better not to know. Laura couldn't argue with that logic. She took the phone and stared at Sarah's number, memorizing it. Her friend. Her lifeline to the outside world. The person who could help her take down Reeves and his entire operation. But calling her was risky. Even on a burner phone, even with a number that supposedly couldn't be traced, there was always a chance that Reeves had found a way to monitor Sarah's phone. If he had, one call would tell him that Laura was alive and give him a starting point to track them down. "We wait until we're at the cabin," Ethan said, reading her thoughts. "Make the call from there. If Reeves somehow traces it, at least we'll have a defensible position and an escape route planned." "You think of everything." "I try to." He pulled back onto the highway. "You should try to sleep. You look exhausted." Laura was exhausted. The adrenaline that had been keeping her going was completely gone now, leaving her feeling like she'd been wrung out and hung up to dry. Her injuries throbbed with every heartbeat, and her eyes felt like they had sand in them. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw Reeves pointing that gun at them, saw the sedan bearing down on them, saw Lily's terrified face reflected in the rearview mirror. "I don't think I can sleep," she said. "Then talk to me. Tell me about your friend Sarah. How do you know you can trust her?" Laura thought back to her academy days, to the young woman who'd been her roommate and her closest friend during those grueling months of training. "Sarah and I went through the academy together. We were roommates, study partners. We had each other's backs through every terrible thing the instructors threw at us. After graduation, we stayed in touch, even though we ended up in different departments. She's solid, Ethan. She's the kind of cop who actually gives a damn about doing the right thing. If anyone can help us, it's her." "And you're sure she's not connected to Reeves? Not part of his operation?" "Positive. Sarah works out of the state police barracks 2 hours from Frost Valley. There's no overlap between her jurisdiction and his. And I know her well enough to know she'd never be part of something like this. She's too straight arrow, too by the book." Ethan nodded slowly. "Okay, then we call her tomorrow. Give you time to rest, time to figure out exactly what you're going to say. We need to make sure that when we blow the whistle on this thing, we do it right. No mistakes, no second chances." "Agreed." They drove in silence for a while. In the back seat, Lily had fallen asleep again, curled up with her head on Ranger's flank. The dog's eyes were open, alert, watching the darkness outside the windows. "Thank you," Laura said quietly, "for everything you've done. For saving my life, for protecting me, for putting yourself and Lily in danger. I know I've said it before, but I need you to know how much it means." "You don't have to thank me." "Yes, I do. You could have left me in that river. You could have turned me away when I showed up at your cabin. You could have handed me over to Reeves when he came looking. But you didn't. You helped me even though it meant risking everything you have. Why?" Ethan was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft, almost reluctant. "When Sarah died, when the cops gave up on finding who killed her, I felt helpless. Like the system that was supposed to protect us had failed. Like justice was just a word that didn't mean anything real." He glanced at her, then back at the road. "But you're trying to fight for justice even when your own department has turned against you. You're risking your life to do the right thing. That means something. That's worth helping." "I'm not a hero, Ethan. I'm just trying to survive." "You're trying to survive so you can bring down the people who are corrupting your department. That makes you a hero in my book." He smiled slightly. "Besides, Lily likes you, and she's a pretty good judge of character." Laura felt something warm unfurl in her chest. It wasn't gratitude exactly, or even friendship. It was something else, something she didn't have a name for. A connection forged in crisis, tempered by danger. The GPS on Ethan's phone directed them off the highway and onto progressively smaller roads. They climbed into the mountains, winding through dense forest, until finally the GPS announced they'd reached their destination. The hunting cabin was small and weathered, nestled in a clearing surrounded by pine trees. It looked abandoned, but when Ethan tried the door, it opened easily. Inside was basic but clean. A main room with a kitchenette and wood stove, 2 small bedrooms, a bathroom with a hand pump for water. "No electricity," Ethan observed, "but there's a generator out back. We'll run it sparingly, just for essentials. Don't want to attract attention with lights or noise." They carried their supplies inside and got the wood stove going. Within an hour, the cabin was warming up, becoming almost cozy. Ethan made sandwiches from supplies Marcus had left in the Honda, and they ate sitting around the wood stove. Lily was more animated now that they were inside and warm. She asked 1,000 questions about the cabin, about why there was no TV, about whether they could go exploring in the woods tomorrow. Ethan answered patiently, never once letting her see how worried he was. But Laura could see it in the tension in his shoulders, in the way his eyes kept drifting to the windows, checking for threats. He was running on fumes, just like she was. The only difference was he was used to it, trained to push through exhaustion and fear to focus on the mission. And right now, his mission was keeping his daughter safe. After dinner, Ethan set up sleeping arrangements. Lily, you take the bedroom on the left. Laura, you take the one on the right. I'll sleep out here in the main room. Keep watch. Dad, I'm scared, Lily said. Can I sleep with you? Of course, baby. He scooped her up and carried her to the bedroom, tucking her into the sleeping bag that Marcus had thoughtfully included with the supplies. Laura used the bathroom. The hand pump worked, though the water was shockingly cold, and then settled into her own sleeping bag. Every muscle in her body ached, and her injured wrist was throbbing again. She needed pain medication, needed rest, needed about 12 hours of uninterrupted sleep. But her mind wouldn't stop racing. Tomorrow she'd call Sarah. Tomorrow she'd start the process of taking down Reeves and his operation. Tomorrow she'd begin fighting back, if she survived that long. She must have dozed off despite her racing thoughts, because when she opened her eyes again, the cabin was dark and quiet. According to her watch, it was just past 3 in the morning. She could hear Ethan moving around in the main room, quietly, trying not to wake anyone, but Laura's cop instincts picked up on it immediately. She got up and padded to the doorway. Ethan was standing by the window, looking out at the moonlit forest. He'd pulled on his jacket and boots, and there was a rifle leaning against the wall beside him. Can't sleep? Laura asked softly. He turned, not startled. He'd probably heard her get up. Just doing a perimeter check, making sure we're secure. See anything? No, which is good, but also makes me nervous. They should be looking for us by now. Should have roadblocks, search teams. The fact that it's quiet either means they haven't figured out where we went, or they're being strategic, waiting for us to make a mistake. Laura moved to stand beside him at the window. The forest was beautiful in the moonlight, pristine and peaceful. Hard to believe that somewhere out there, men with guns were hunting them. What was she like? Laura asked. Your wife. Ethan was quiet for so long that Laura thought he wasn't going to answer. Then he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. She was light. That's the best way I can describe it. She was sunshine and laughter and everything good in the world. She made me better, made me want to be better. And when she died, the light went out. He paused. Except for Lily. Lily's got her mother's light. That's what keeps me going. She seems like an amazing kid. She is. Sometimes I look at her and I see Sarah so clearly it hurts. The same smile, the same way of tilting her head when she's thinking. The same absolute certainty that the world is fundamentally good and people are fundamentally kind. His jaw tightened. I'm terrified that this, what's happening right now, will break that certainty. Will teach her that the world isn't safe, that people can't be trusted. Kids are resilient, Laura said. She'll be okay. Will she? I've spent 3 years trying to give her a stable, safe life, trying to make sure she never has to see the ugly side of the world. And now, because I helped you, which I don't regret, don't get me wrong, she's caught up in a manhunt. She watched armed men chase us. She heard gunshots. She's sleeping in a strange cabin in the middle of nowhere because it's not safe to go home. I'm sorry, Laura said. I'm so sorry I brought this into your life. Don't apologize. You didn't bring this. Reeves and his people did. Ethan turned to look at her. But I need you to promise me something. When this is over, when you've brought them down and justice has been served, you'll disappear from our lives. Lily's already getting attached to you. She thinks you're some kind of superhero. If you stick around, if you become a permanent fixture, and then something happens to you because of your job, it'll destroy her. She can't lose another person she cares about. The words hit Laura like a physical blow. Because somewhere in the back of her mind, she'd been imagining what might come after, had been thinking about these two people who'd risked everything for her, wondering if maybe they could be something more than temporary allies. Wondering if maybe, when the danger passed, there could be something here worth exploring. But Ethan was right. Lily couldn't afford to lose anyone else, and Laura's job was dangerous even on a good day. Getting involved with this family would be selfish, would put them at risk. Okay, she said quietly. When this is over, I'll disappear. You have my word. Ethan nodded, then turned back to the window. They stood in silence for a while, watching the moonlight on the snow. Finally, Laura went back to her room. But sleep didn't come easy. She lay in the darkness, listening to the wind in the trees, and tried not to think about what she was giving up before she even had a chance to have it. Morning came too soon. Laura woke to the smell of coffee and found Ethan already up, heating water on the wood stove. Lily was still asleep in the other bedroom, and Ranger was curled up outside her door like a furry guardian. "Morning," Ethan said. "Coffee?" "Please." He poured her a cup of instant coffee. It was terrible, but it was hot and caffeinated, so Laura wasn't complaining. They sat at the small table and Ethan pulled out the burner phone. "Time to make the call," he said. "You ready?" Laura took a deep breath. "Ready as I'll ever be." She dialed Sarah's number, and her heart pounded as the phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Please pick up, she thought. Please be there. "Hello?" Sarah's voice, cautious and questioning. She wouldn't recognize the number. "Sarah, it's Laura." A long pause, then, "Laura, oh my God, we thought you were dead. There was a report that you crashed your car, that you drowned in the river. Where are you? Are you okay?" "I'm alive, but I'm not okay. Sarah, I need your help. Everything I told you about the corruption in Frost Valley, it's worse than I thought. My captain tried to have me killed. He's got at least a dozen officers working with him, maybe more. I have evidence, but it went down with my car. I need protection. I need to get this investigation to the FBI. I need—" "Laura, slow down. You're saying Captain Reeves tried to kill you?" "Yes. He ran me off the road. I barely escaped. And now he's hunting me, Sarah. He has people looking for me, and if they find me, I'm dead." "Where are you right now?" Laura hesitated. Something in Sarah's voice had changed, a subtle shift in tone that made Laura's instincts prickle. "I can't tell you that yet," Laura said carefully. "Not until I know it's safe. Laura, if you're in danger, I need to know where you are so I can send help. I can have state police there in minutes." No state police, not yet. I don't know who I can trust." "You can trust me." Sarah's voice was urgent now. "I'm your friend Laura. Let me help you." And that's when Laura heard it. A faint sound in the background of Sarah's call. A voice, male, saying something indistinct. "Sarah?" Laura said slowly. "Are you alone right now?" Another pause, just a fraction too long. "Yes, of course I'm alone." Laura's blood ran cold. Sarah was lying. There was someone with her, someone who was probably listening to every word of this conversation. Ethan had picked up on it too. His eyes met Laura's across the table, and he mouthed one word, "Hang up." But before Laura could end the call, Sarah spoke again. "Laura, please, tell me where you are. Captain Reeves is here with me. He wants to help you. He says there's been a terrible misunderstanding." Laura felt like she'd been punched in the gut. Reeves was there. With Sarah. Which meant either Sarah had been working with him all along, or he'd gotten to her somehow, convinced her that Laura was the problem. "A misunderstanding?" Laura's voice came out hard, controlled. "He tried to kill me, Sarah. He says you're confused, possibly suffering from hypothermia-related hallucinations. He says you crashed your car and wandered into the woods, that you're not thinking clearly." Sarah's voice was pleading now. "He just wants to bring you in safely, get you medical attention. Please, Laura, trust me." "Put him on," Laura said. A rustling sound, then Reeves' smooth voice filled her ear. "Officer Bennett." "Thank God you're alive. We've all been so worried about you." "Cut the crap, Reeves. I know what you're doing. I know about the drug operation, about the corruption, and I'm going to bring you down. Laura, I understand you're frightened and confused right now, but you need to come in. We can sort all of this out at the station. So you can finish what you started? No thanks. I don't know what you think happened, but I assure you, I think you tried to murder me because I found evidence of your criminal enterprise. I think you have half the department on your payroll. And I think you're using my friend right now to try to locate me so you can send your thugs to finish the job." Reeves's voice dropped all pretense of concern. Now it was cold, hard, dangerous. You're making a mistake, Bennett. You can't run forever, and everyone you involve in this, everyone who helps you, will pay the price. Is that what you want? More blood on your hands? The only blood will be on your hands when I bring you to justice. Justice? He laughed, a sound without humor. You really think you can take me down? You have no evidence, no backup, no resources. You're alone, you're injured, and you're running out of places to hide. This ends one way, Bennett. With you in a body bag or in a cell, your choice. There's a third option you're not considering. And what's that? I win. Laura hung up. Her hands were shaking. Ethan gently took the phone from her and removed the battery, making it impossible to track. He has Sarah, Laura said numbly. My friend. The one person I thought I could trust. We don't know if she's working with him or if he coerced her somehow. It doesn't matter. Either way, she can't help us. We're on our own. Lily appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleep from her eyes. What's wrong? Why do you look sad, Officer Laura? Laura forced a smile. Nothing's wrong, sweetheart. Just dealing with some grown-up stuff. But everything was wrong. Her one lifeline to legitimate law enforcement was compromised. Reeves knew she was alive, knew she was trying to fight back, and he'd made it clear that he'd hurt anyone who helped her, which meant Ethan and Lily were in even more danger than before. We need to leave, Laura said. Now, he'll be tracing that call, triangulating the cell tower. We've got maybe an hour before... She was interrupted by the sound of vehicles approaching. Multiple vehicles, engines growling through the forest. They'd found them. Ethan moved with the speed of a man who'd trained for exactly this scenario. Lily, grab your coat and boots. Right now. Don't ask questions. Laura was already at the window, peering through the gap in the curtains. 3 vehicles were coming up the mountain road, 2 black SUVs and a sedan. Moving fast, but not recklessly, like they knew exactly where they were going. How did they find us so quickly? Laura's mind raced through possibilities. We pulled the battery from the phone. Doesn't matter now. Ethan had his rifle in one hand and was shoving supplies into a backpack with the other. The cabin backs up to National Forest. We go out the rear window, head into the trees. They'll have to follow on foot, which gives us an advantage. They'll have more people, more guns. But they don't know this terrain, and I do. Marcus and I used to hunt up here. He tossed Laura a heavy winter jacket from the closet. Put this on. Lily, come here, baby. Lily emerged from the bedroom, her face pale but her jaw set with determination that was heartbreaking in someone so young. She was already wearing her pink parka and boots. Ranger stood beside her, hackles raised, a low growl rumbling in his chest. Are we running again? Lily asked. Yeah, sweetheart, we're running again. Ethan knelt down to her level. Remember the games we used to play in the woods? How you'd follow me real quiet, stepping exactly where I stepped? Like ninjas, Lily said. Exactly like ninjas. We're going to play that game now. Can you do that for me? I can do it, Daddy. The sound of car doors slamming echoed through the forest. Men's voices calling out to each other. They were surrounding the cabin. Ethan threw open the back window. Go! Now! Laura went first, dropping into the snow outside. The cold was a shock even through the heavy jacket. She turned and reached up for Lily, and Ethan lowered his daughter down. Laura caught her, set her on the ground, then reached for the backpack Ethan was passing through. Ranger leaped through the window with surprising grace for such a large dog. Then Ethan came through, pulling the window closed behind him. This way. He moved into the trees, not running but walking fast, picking a path that used natural cover, fallen logs, thick brush, stands of pine. Laura followed with Lily between them, and Ranger brought up the rear, constantly looking back toward the cabin. Behind them, Laura heard the front door of the cabin being kicked in. Shouts. Clear! Back bedroom clear! They're gone. Check outside. They'd been inside for maybe 30 seconds. Another few minutes and they would have been trapped. Ethan led them deeper into the forest, moving uphill, away from the cabin and the roads. The terrain was steep and treacherous, covered in snow that hid rocks and roots. Laura's injured wrist screamed every time she had to catch herself from falling, and her ribs felt like someone was stabbing her with each labored breath in the thin mountain air. But she kept moving. Lily was keeping up remarkably well, her small legs churning through the snow without complaint. The little girl's resilience was astounding. "Dad," Lily whispered, "I hear them." She was right. The sound of pursuit was getting closer. Shouting voices, breaking branches. At least 4 men, maybe more, crashing through the forest behind them. "I know, baby. Keep going. Don't look back." They climbed for another 15 minutes, Laura's lungs burning with the effort. Then Ethan held up a hand, signaling them to stop. He was breathing hard but not gasping, his military conditioning still serving him well. "There's a ridge up ahead," he said quietly. "On the other side is a steep drop down to a creek bed. We can use it to lose them. The water will hide our tracks." "How steep?" Laura asked. "Steep enough that they'll have trouble following, but we can do it if we're careful." Laura looked at Lily, who was shivering despite her warm coat. The little girl's cheeks were flushed with exertion and cold, but she nodded bravely. "I can do it," Lily said. They pushed onto the ridge. When they reached it, Laura saw what Ethan meant. The ground dropped away sharply, maybe 40 feet down, to where a narrow creek cut through the forest. The slope was covered in loose rocks and snow, more of a controlled fall than a climb. "I'll go first," Ethan said. "I'll find the safest path. Laura, you come down with Lily. Ranger will manage on his own. He's done this before." The pursuing voices were getting louder. Laura could hear radios crackling, someone calling for additional units. Ethan started down the slope, half sliding, half climbing, using trees and rocks for handholds. When he reached the bottom, he looked up and waved. "Come on, sweetheart," Laura said to Lily. "We're going to go down together. Hold on to my jacket and don't let go." They started down. It was treacherous going, the loose rocks shifting under their feet, threatening to send them tumbling. Laura's injured wrist made it nearly impossible to grip properly, and twice she nearly lost her balance. But Lily held on tight, trusting Laura completely, and somehow they made it to the bottom without falling. Ranger came down in a series of controlled jumps and slides, his forelegs giving him better stability than his human companions. The creek was maybe 10 feet wide, shallow, but running fast. The water would be ice cold, but it would hide their scent from any tracking dogs and make their trail harder to follow. "Wade downstream," Ethan said. "Stay in the water, go about 100 yards, then we'll come out on the far bank and head east." They entered the creek. The water was every bit as cold as Laura feared, instantly soaking through her boots and jeans. It felt like someone was driving nails into her feet. Beside her, Lily gasped, but didn't cry out. They waded downstream, the current pulling at their legs, threatening to knock them off balance. The creek bed was rocky and uneven, and Laura had to concentrate on every step to avoid turning an ankle. Behind and above them, Laura heard someone reach the ridge. "They went down! Watch it, the slope's unstable. I see tracks in the snow. They went toward the creek." Ethan picked up the pace, pushing them faster through the water. 100 yards felt like a mile, but finally he gestured toward the far bank. "Out here. Move quiet." They climbed out of the creek, and immediately Laura's wet jeans began to freeze in the cold air. Her legs felt stiff, wooden. This was bad. This was hypothermia territory again, and they didn't have time to build a fire or find shelter. But Ethan was already moving, leading them into a dense stand of pines where the snow wasn't as deep. He stopped and pulled off his backpack, digging through it until he found 2 emergency blankets, thin sheets of reflective material designed to retain body heat. "Wrap these around your legs," he told Laura and Lily. "Under your pants. It'll help." It was awkward and uncomfortable, but the blankets did help, trapping what little warmth remained. Ethan pulled out energy bars and made them eat, replacing the calories they were burning trying to stay warm. "How far to civilization?" Laura asked quietly while Lily was distracted by Ranger. "There's a ranger station about 5 miles east. If we can reach it, we can get help. Real help, not corrupt cops." 5 miles in this terrain, in the cold, with a 7-year-old? You have a better idea? Laura didn't. They were out of options, out of places to hide. The ranger station was their best bet. "Let's go," she said. They moved through the forest, always heading east, using the sun to navigate when the trees were too thick to see landmarks. Ethan knew the terrain well, finding game trails and natural paths that made the going easier. But it was still brutal. Steep climbs, difficult descents, constant vigilance for pursuit. Lily was flagging. Laura could see the exhaustion in the way the little girl's steps were getting shorter. the way she was leaning more heavily on her father when the terrain got rough. But she never complained, never asked to stop. After about 2 hours, they heard a helicopter. "Get under cover," Ethan hissed. They pressed themselves into a thicket of evergreens, the branches hanging low enough to hide them from aerial view. The helicopter passed overhead. Laura caught a glimpse of it through the branches, a state police bird. But that meant nothing. If Reeves had reached high enough in the state police to compromise Sarah, he might have access to other resources too. The helicopter circled the area for several minutes before flying off to the south. When the sound of its rotors faded, they moved again. By early afternoon, they were all past the point of exhaustion. Laura's legs felt like lead, and every breath was a struggle against the cold air and her aching ribs. Lily had stopped talking entirely, just focused on putting one foot in front of the other. Even Ranger looked tired, his tail drooping. Ethan called a halt in a small clearing where the sun penetrated the canopy. "We need to rest, just for a few minutes." They collapsed against a fallen log. Ethan pulled out the last of their food, some crackers and jerky that Marcus had included in the supplies, and divided it among them. It wasn't nearly enough, but it was something. "Daddy, I'm so tired," Lily said, her voice small. "I know, baby, but we're almost there. Just a couple more miles and we'll be safe." "You promise?" Ethan's face was anguished. Laura realized he was a man who never made promises he couldn't keep, and right now he couldn't guarantee their safety. Couldn't guarantee anything except that he'd fight with everything he had to protect his daughter. "I promise I'll do everything in my power to keep you safe," he said finally. "That's all I can promise, Lily, but it's a promise I'll keep no matter what." Lily nodded, accepting this. She leaned against her father, and he wrapped his arms around her, holding her close. Laura looked away, giving them privacy in their moment. She pulled out the burner phone and stared at it, even though the battery was still disconnected. Somewhere out there was Sarah, either betraying her or being used as a pawn. Somewhere out there was Reeves coordinating this manhunt, determined to silence her permanently. And somewhere out there was the truth, evidence of corruption, of drug trafficking, of abuse of power. Evidence that could bring down an entire network of dirty cops, but only if she lived long enough to expose it. "We should move," Ethan said after about 10 minutes. "The longer we stay still, the more likely they'll catch up." They hauled themselves to their feet and continued east. The sun was starting to descend toward the horizon, and with it the temperature was dropping fast. They needed to reach the ranger station before dark. Being caught out in these mountains at night without proper gear would be a death sentence. Around 4 o'clock, they finally saw it. A small building through the trees, smoke rising from its chimney. The ranger station. "Wait here," Ethan said. "Let me scout it first. Make sure it's safe." He approached the station carefully, circling it from a distance, checking for vehicles or signs of occupation. After a few minutes, he waved them forward. They emerged from the trees and hurried toward the building. A sign out front read North Peak Ranger Station, U.S. Forest Service. Through the windows, Laura could see warm light. Ethan knocked on the door. It opened almost immediately, revealing a man in his 60s wearing the distinctive uniform of a forest ranger. He had kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, and his expression went from puzzled to concerned as he took in their bedraggled appearance. "Good Lord, folks, what happened to you?" "We need help," Ethan said. "Please, it's an emergency." The ranger didn't hesitate. Come in, you all look half frozen." He ushered them inside, where a wood stove was putting out blessed warmth. "I'm Ranger Tom Fletcher, been manning this station for 23 years. Sit down, let me get you something hot to drink." Laura wanted to cry with relief. They'd made it. They were safe, at least for the moment. Fletcher moved around his small station with practiced efficiency, putting on a kettle for tea, pulling out blankets, radioing to his headquarters that he had visitors who needed assistance. "Now," he said, settling into a chair across from them. "You want to tell me what's going on? I've been hearing chatter on the police bands all day about a fugitive in the area. Don't suppose that has anything to do with you folks?" Laura exchanged glances with Ethan. How much should they tell him? Could they trust him? But looking at Fletcher's weathered, honest face, Laura made a decision. They needed help, real help, and this man seemed like the genuine article. "I'm Detective Laura Bennett with the Frost Valley Police Department," she said. "Or I was. 2 days ago, I uncovered evidence that my captain and numerous other officers are involved in drug trafficking and corruption. When I tried to expose them, they tried to kill me. I've been running ever since." Fletcher's expression hardened. "That's a serious accusation." "I know, and I can prove it if I can get to someone who isn't part of the corruption, someone in federal law enforcement, preferably." You're saying local cops are hunting you right now?" "Yes, and possibly state police too. I don't know how far the corruption spreads." Fletcher was quiet for a moment, processing this. Then he stood and locked the door to the station. "Okay, here's what we're going to do. I have a direct line to the FBI field office in the state capitol, not through police channels, through a federal system that local law enforcement can't monitor. We're going to call them, and we're going to get you some real protection." Hope surged in Laura's chest. "You believe me?" "Ma'am, I've been a ranger long enough to have dealt with more than my share of law enforcement. I've seen good cops and bad cops, and I've learned to trust my instincts about people." He looked at Lily, who was warming her hands by the stove. "No one drags a child through the mountains in winter unless they're desperate, unless they're running from something real. So yeah, I believe you." Fletcher picked up a phone. Not a regular phone, but some kind of satellite or dedicated line system. He dialed a number and waited. "This is Ranger Fletcher at North Peak Station. I need to speak to someone in the Criminal Investigation Division." "Yes, I'll hold." He covered the mouthpiece. "This might take a minute. Federal bureaucracy moves slow." Those minutes felt like hours. Laura kept expecting to hear vehicles approaching, kept waiting for Reeves and his people to burst through the door. But the forest outside remained quiet except for the wind in the trees. Finally, Fletcher began speaking again. "Yes. Hello, my name is Tom Fletcher, U.S. Forest Service. I have someone here who needs federal protection. She's a police detective claiming there's widespread corruption in her department, and she's being hunted by other officers. Yes, I understand how that sounds, but I'm asking you to send someone up here to take her statement." He paused, listening. "North Peak Ranger Station, about 5 miles east of—" "Yes, that's right. How soon can you get here?" Another long pause. Laura held her breath. "Understood. We'll be waiting." Fletcher hung up. "They're sending 2 agents. They'll be here in about 90 minutes. In the meantime, you folks should warm up, get something to eat. I've got soup I can heat up." "Thank you," Laura said, her voice breaking slightly. "Thank you so much." "Don't thank me yet. Let's wait until the FBI gets here and you're actually safe." Fletcher busied himself heating soup on a camp stove. The smell made Laura's stomach growl. She couldn't remember the last time she'd had a real meal. While he worked, Ethan helped Lily out of her wet boots and wrapped her feet in warm, dry socks from Fletcher's supply cabinet. "Daddy, are we really safe now?" Lily asked. "Getting there, sweetheart. Getting there." They ate soup and crackers, and Laura felt strength returning to her limbs. The warmth of the station was almost overwhelming after so long in the cold. She wanted to close her eyes, wanted to sleep for about a week. But she couldn't relax yet. Not until the FBI arrived. Not until she was in protective custody and Ethan and Lily were truly safe. An hour passed. Fletcher made small talk, telling stories about his years as a ranger, the animals he'd encountered, the hikers he'd rescued from various predicaments. It was clear he was trying to distract them, to keep their minds off the danger they were still in. Lily was nodding off, her head on her father's shoulder, when Ranger suddenly stood up. His ears pricked forward, and a low growl rumbled in his chest. Everyone froze. "Someone's coming," Ethan said quietly. Fletcher moved to the window and peered out. His face went pale. "That's not the FBI. Wrong vehicles. Those are state police cruisers." Laura's heart sank. "How many?" 3 cars, maybe 6 officers." "They found us." Laura was already standing, her mind racing through options. "We need to leave. Now." "There's a back door," Fletcher said. "Leads into the forest. I can hold them off. Tell them you went a different direction." "They'll hurt you," Laura said. "These aren't good cops. They're criminals." "I'm a federal employee. They won't dare touch me." But Fletcher's voice lacked conviction. The cruisers pulled up outside the station. Through the window, Laura watched as 6 men got out. She recognized 2 of them from the Frost Valley Department. The others wore state police uniforms, but Laura didn't know if they were legitimate or if Reeves had somehow gotten them on his payroll too. And then Captain Reeves himself emerged from the lead vehicle. "He's here," Laura breathed. Reeves is here. Back door, Ethan said urgently. Lily, Ranger, let's go. Fletcher pointed them toward a door at the rear of the station. There's a trail that leads deeper into the forest. Follow it for about a mile and you'll reach an old fire lookout tower. It's been decommissioned, but the structure's still sound. You can hide there. Thank you, Laura said. Go, I'll buy you time. They slipped out the back door just as heavy knocking sounded on the front. Laura heard Fletcher call out, Hold on, I'm coming! Then they were running again, following a barely visible trail through the darkening forest. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that would have been beautiful if Laura hadn't been running for her life. Behind them, she heard shouting, Fletcher's voice raised in protest. Then a sound that made her blood run cold. A single gunshot. No, Laura whispered. Ethan grabbed her arm. Keep moving, don't stop. If we stop, he died for nothing. Laura wanted to go back, wanted to help Fletcher, but she knew Ethan was right. They had to keep running. It was the only way to honor what Fletcher had tried to do for them. They ran through the gathering darkness, Lily sobbing quietly as Ethan carried her, Ranger loping alongside them. The trail was steep and difficult to follow as the light faded, but they kept pushing forward, driven by desperation and grief and the terrible knowledge that a good man had just died trying to help them. The fire lookout tower appeared ahead of them like a skeletal ghost, its metal framework rising above the trees. The wooden cabin at the top looked weathered and abandoned, but when they climbed the switchback stairs, Laura's legs screaming with every step, they found the door unlocked. Inside was a single room with windows on all sides, giving a 360-degree view of the forest. There was old furniture covered in dust, some emergency supplies in a metal cabinet, and a radio system that looked like it hadn't worked in years. This is it, Ethan said, setting Lily down gently. This is where we make our stand. Laura moved to the windows. From this height, she could see for miles. Could see the ranger station in the distance, lights blazing. Could see flashlight beams moving through the forest, getting closer. They'd picked up the trail. They were coming. How long until the FBI gets there? Laura asked. Ethan checked his watch. If Fletcher's timing was right, they should arrive at the ranger station in about 30 minutes. Maybe they'll see what happened and call for backup. Or maybe Reeves will intercept them, kill them too. Laura felt despair threatening to overwhelm her. This has to stop. I can't let anyone else die because of me. This isn't because of you, Ethan said firmly. This is because of them, because they chose corruption over honor, murder over justice. You didn't make these choices. They did. Doesn't matter whose fault it is if we're all dead. We're not dead yet. Ethan opened the emergency cabinet and pulled out what looked like flare guns. And we're not going down without a fight. He handed Laura one of the flare guns, then started checking the other supplies. There were emergency blankets, first aid kits, water bottles, and surprisingly, a box of shotgun shells, but no shotgun. Someone took the gun but left the ammo, Ethan muttered. Figures. The flashlight beams were getting closer. Laura could hear voices now, calling out to each other, coordinating their search. They'd be at the tower in minutes. Ethan pulled Lily close. Baby, I need you to hide. There's a storage closet over there. Get inside and close the door. No matter what you hear, no matter what happens, you stay hidden until Officer Laura or I come get you. Understand? I'm scared, Daddy. I know, I'm scared too. But you're the bravest girl I know, and you're going to be okay. I promise. He kissed her forehead. Go on now. Ranger will stay with you. Lily scrambled into the closet, and Ranger followed her. Ethan closed the door most of the way, leaving it open just a crack for air. Then he and Laura positioned themselves at opposite windows, watching the approaching lights. When they come, Ethan said quietly, we don't fire unless they fire first. We're not killers, we're survivors. Agreed. The lights reached the base of the tower. Laura counted at least 8 men, maybe more, all armed, all willing to kill. Captain Reeves' voice echoed up from below. Bennett, I know you're up there. It's over. Come down and we can end this peacefully. Peacefully? Laura shouted back. You shot Ranger Fletcher, a federal employee. You really think you can come back from that? Fletcher was unfortunate collateral damage. He shouldn't have gotten involved. Don't make the same mistake he did, Cole. This last was directed at Ethan. You're a civilian. You have a daughter. Walk away now, and I'll let you both live. You'll let us live? Ethan's voice was filled with contempt. You'll hunt us down just like you're hunting Laura. We're witnesses. We're loose ends. Men like you don't leave loose ends. Then I guess we do this the hard way. A shot rang out, punching through one of the tower windows. Laura and Ethan both dropped flat. So much for not firing first, Laura muttered. More shots followed, a sustained barrage that shattered most of the windows and sent splinters of wood flying through the air. Laura covered her head, waiting for the shooting to stop. When it did, there was a moment of eerie silence. Then Reeves called out again. Last chance, Bennett! Give yourself up! The man and his kid can walk away! Laura looked at Ethan. He was bleeding from a cut on his cheek where a piece of glass had hit him, but his eyes were clear and determined. Don't you dare, he said. Don't you dare even think about surrendering. Ethan, he'll kill you and Lily anyway, but if I give myself up, maybe I can buy you time to escape. And maybe he kills all of us anyway. You go down there, you die. At least here we have a fighting chance. Laura knew he was right, but the thought of that little girl in the closet, terrified and alone, listening to bullets tear through the tower, it was almost more than she could bear. She raised her voice. Reeves, you want me? Then come get me. But I'm warning you, I'm not going quietly. Reeves laughed. Brave words from a dead woman. Boys, light it up. At first, Laura didn't understand what he meant. Then she smelled it. Smoke. They were setting fire to the tower. Horror washed over her. The old wooden structure would go up like kindling. They'd be burned alive if they stayed, picked off like fish in a barrel if they tried to escape down the stairs. The flare gun, Laura said suddenly. Give me the flare gun. What are you? Trust me. Ethan tossed her the flare gun. Laura loaded it, moved to the window facing away from where Reeves and his men were positioned, and fired straight up into the darkening sky. The flare arced upward, a brilliant red star that would be visible for miles. Then she loaded the second flare and fired it too. What are you doing? Ethan asked. Sending a signal. The FBI agents. If they're anywhere in the area, they'll see that. They'll come investigate. And if they don't, then we die. But at least we tried. The smoke was getting thicker now. Flames were beginning to lick up the sides of the tower. Heat was building in the small cabin. We can't stay here, Ethan said. The closet, Laura realized. Get Lily out of the closet. Ethan yanked open the closet door. Lily tumbled out, coughing, Ranger right behind her. The smoke was worse near the floor, where they'd been hiding. We have to go down, Laura said. We'll have to fight our way through them. Against 8 armed men? We'll never make it. You have a better idea? Before Ethan could answer, they heard new sounds from below, shouting, gunfire, but not directed at the tower. And then a voice amplified through a megaphone. FBI, drop your weapons. You are surrounded. Laura's heart leapt. They'd seen the flares. The FBI had come. The firefight below lasted maybe 2 minutes, though it felt like forever. When it ended, the night was filled with the sounds of sirens and the rotating flash of emergency lights. A voice called up to the tower. This is Special Agent Rodriguez, FBI. Is anyone up there? Yes, Laura shouted. 3 people and a dog. The tower's on fire. We need to get down. We're sending someone up. Hold tight. 2 FBI agents in tactical gear climbed the tower stairs, moving fast despite the heat and smoke. They helped Laura, Ethan, Lily, and Ranger down, covering them as they descended through the smoke and flames. At the bottom, Laura saw Reeves on his knees, hands cuffed behind his back, surrounded by FBI agents. His face was a mask of fury. When he saw Laura, he lunged toward her, but agents held him back. This isn't over, he screamed. You think you've won? You think this is over? Special Agent Rodriguez, a woman in her 40s with iron gray hair and sharp eyes, stepped between them. It's over, Captain Reeves. We've been investigating your organization for 6 months. Detective Bennett's attempted murder was the break we needed. We have enough evidence to bring down your entire network. Laura stared at her. You've been investigating, but how? We had an undercover agent in your department, Officer Webb. Marcus Webb, Laura's partner. The man who'd worked cases with her, shared coffee with her. He'd been FBI all along. But I thought, you were never really in danger from us, Rodriguez said. Webb was keeping tabs on you, making sure Reeves didn't succeed in silencing you. When you went into the river, he reported it immediately. We've been tracking the search parties ever since, gathering evidence, documenting every crime they committed while hunting you. The murder of Ranger Fletcher was the final piece we needed to make federal charges stick. Laura's legs gave out. She sat down hard in the snow, overwhelmed by the enormity of what Rodriguez was saying. It was over. It was really over. Ethan sat down beside her, Lily in his arms. The little girl was crying, but they were tears of relief now, rather than fear. Is it really over, Daddy? Lily asked. Are the bad guys really caught? Yeah, sweetheart. They're caught. Officer Laura won. Lily looked at Laura with those big brown eyes. You're a real hero, just like I said. Laura didn't feel like a hero. She felt exhausted, traumatized, and grateful to be alive. But looking at this child who'd been through so much and still believed in heroes, she managed to smile. We all are, she said. Your dad, you, even Ranger. We're all heroes. The FBI agents processed the scene, taking statements, photographing evidence, loading Reeves and his accomplices into vehicles for transport. Paramedics arrived and checked everyone over. Laura's wrist was indeed sprained and needed proper treatment. Lily had minor frostbite on her toes, and Ethan had cuts and bruises that needed cleaning. But they were alive. Against all odds, they'd survived. As dawn broke over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Laura sat in the back of an ambulance and watched FBI agents swarm over the scene. It was really over. The nightmare had ended. Agent Rodriguez approached her. We'll need you to come to the field office, give a full statement, but first get some rest. You've earned it. What happens now? To Reeves, to the others? Federal charges, conspiracy, drug trafficking, attempted murder, murder of a federal employee. They're going away for a very long time, Detective Bennett, thanks to you. Laura shook her head. Not just me. Ethan Cole and his daughter, they saved my life. Multiple times. They deserve recognition. They'll get it, I promise you that. Rodriguez squeezed Laura's shoulder. You did good, Detective. You stood up when it would have been easier to look the other way. The Bureau needs more cops like you. As the agent walked away, Ethan appeared at Laura's side. Someone had given him a blanket and a cup of coffee, and he looked marginally less like death warmed over. So, he said, FBI investigation. Your partner was undercover. We were never really as alone as we thought. Apparently not. Doesn't change what we went through, doesn't make it less real. No, Laura agreed. It doesn't. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sun rise. Finally, Ethan spoke again. When this is all settled, when you've given your statements and the trials are over, what will you do? Laura thought about his question, thought about going back to Frost Valley, to the department that had tried to kill her, thought about the memories that would haunt every street corner. I don't know, she admitted. Maybe transfer to another department. Maybe take some time off and figure out what comes next. You? Go home. Try to give Lily some semblance of normal life again. Hope she doesn't need too much therapy. Laura smiled sadly. She's lucky to have you as a father. I'm lucky to have her as a daughter. More silence. Then Laura remembered what Ethan had said in the cabin about her needing to disappear from their lives once this was over, about Lily not being able to afford to lose anyone else she cared about. I should go, Laura said, starting to stand. Give my statement. Start figuring out my next steps. Ethan caught her hand. Laura, wait. She looked down at him, and the expression on his face made her breath catch. What I said before, he said quietly, about you disappearing from our lives. I was scared. Scared of losing someone else, scared of Lily getting hurt. But watching you these past few days, seeing your courage, your determination to do the right thing no matter the cost. He paused. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe the risk is worth it. Ethan, I'm not saying I have answers. I'm not saying I know what comes next for any of us, but I am saying maybe we don't have to disappear from each other's lives. Maybe we deserve a chance to see what we could be when we're not running for our lives. Laura's heart was pounding. Are you sure? Really sure? No, he admitted. But I'm willing to find out if you are. Laura thought about Lily's face, about Ranger's steady presence, about this man who'd risked everything to save her. Thought about the connection they'd forged in crisis and whether it could survive in the real world. "Yeah," she said finally. "I'm willing to find out." Ethan smiled, a real smile, the first she'd seen from him. It transformed his face, made him look younger, less burdened. From inside an ambulance, Lily's voice called out, "Dad, Officer Laura, come look! They're giving Ranger a medal for being brave." Laura and Ethan looked at each other and laughed. Whatever came next, whatever challenges they'd face, at least they'd face them together. That was enough. For now, it was more than enough. They walked toward the ambulance hand in hand, ready to begin whatever came next. The ceremony honoring Ranger took place right there in the mountains, with FBI agents and paramedics gathered around the German Shepherd, who sat proudly while a temporary badge was pinned to his collar. It was impromptu and unconventional, but Agent Rodriguez insisted that heroism deserved immediate recognition, not bureaucratic delays. Lily clapped so hard her small hands turned red, and even the hardened federal agent smiled as Ranger accepted his honor with a dignity that suggested he understood exactly what was happening. "He's officially a hero now," Lily announced to anyone who would listen. "My dog is a real police dog hero." "He always was," Ethan said, ruffling his daughter's hair. "We just made it official." Laura watched this scene unfold with a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with the blankets wrapped around her shoulders. 3 days ago, she'd been alone, drowning in a frozen river, certain she was about to die. Now she was surrounded by people who'd risked everything to save her, and for the first time in weeks, she felt something that resembled hope. The ambulances transported them to a hospital in the state capital, where doctors examined Laura's injuries more thoroughly. Her wrist was definitely sprained and needed to be immobilized for several weeks. She had 3 cracked ribs, multiple contusions, and the beginnings of pneumonia from her time in the river and exposure to the cold. The doctor prescribed antibiotics, pain medication, and strict orders to rest. "You're lucky to be alive," the doctor said, not unkindly. "Another few hours in those conditions, and we'd be having a very different conversation." Laura knew she was right, knew that without Ethan and Lily and Ranger, without Fletcher's sacrifice and the FBI's timely arrival, she'd be dead in that tower or at the bottom of the river. Ethan and Lily were in the room next door receiving their own examinations. Lily's frostbite was minor and would heal completely with proper care. Ethan's cuts needed stitches, and he was malnourished and dehydrated, but otherwise in remarkable shape considering what they'd been through. When the doctors finally released them, with stern warnings about follow-up appointments and taking it easy, Agent Rodriguez was waiting in the hallway. "Detective Bennett, Mr. Cole, we've arranged hotel rooms for you. Federal protection until we're certain there are no remaining threats. We've arrested 12 officers from Frost Valley PD, 3 from state police, and we're still investigating how deep this network goes." "What about Captain Reeves?" Laura asked. "In custody, facing more charges than I can count. Murder, attempted murder, conspiracy, drug trafficking, racketeering, corruption of public officials. The list goes on. He'll spend the rest of his life in prison. We'll make sure of that." Some of the tension Laura had been carrying finally eased. Reeves was really caught, really going to pay for what he'd done. "There's something else," Rodriguez continued. "We found your evidence. The files you uploaded to the department server? Your partner, Agent Webb, secured them before Reeves could have them deleted. Everything you documented about the drug operation, the money laundering, the corruption, it's all there. It's all admissible in court." Laura felt tears spring to her eyes. "Marcus saved them. I didn't know he was FBI. I thought maybe he was part of it." "He thought you were incredible," Rodriguez said with a small smile. "Said you were the best cop he'd ever worked with. Said if more officers had your integrity, the Bureau wouldn't need to run undercover operations in police departments. Can I see him? Talk to him?" "He's being debriefed right now, but I'll let him know you asked. I'm sure he'd like to see you too." "Boss." The hotel Rodriguez had arranged was actually a suite. 2 bedrooms, a living area, and a kitchenette. FBI agents were stationed in the hallway, and Rodriguez assured them that no one would get to them without going through federal protection first. "Rest tonight," Rodriguez said. "Tomorrow we'll start taking formal statements. It's going to be a long process, but we'll get through it together." After she left, Laura, Ethan, and Lily stood in the suite looking at each other with something like disbelief. They were safe. Actually, truly safe for the first time in days. "I need a shower," Ethan said. "Lily needs a bath. We all need to sleep for about a week." "Agreed," Laura said. But first they ordered room service, real food, hot and plentiful. Lily's eyes went wide at the menu options, and she ordered chicken fingers and French fries and ice cream with the enthusiasm of a child who'd earned every bit of indulgence. While they waited for the food, Ethan called Marcus to let him know they were safe. The conversation was brief but emotional. Marcus had been worried sick when he lost track of them in the manhunt, had feared the worst until the FBI raid. The food arrived, and they ate together around the small dining table. Lily chattered nonstop, the terror of the past days giving way to relief and excitement. She told Laura about her school, her friends, her favorite books. She asked Laura questions about being a police officer, about whether she'd ever caught any really bad guys before this. "A few," Laura admitted, "but none as bad as Captain Reeves." "Are you going to keep being a police officer?" Lily asked. It was the question Laura had been avoiding asking herself. She loved being a cop, loved serving and protecting. But could she go back to Frost Valley? Could she work in a department that had been so thoroughly corrupted? "I don't know yet, sweetheart," Laura said honestly. "I need to figure that out." After dinner, Lily had her bath and Ethan tucked her into one of the bedrooms. Laura could hear him reading to her, something about a princess and a dragon, his deep voice soft and soothing. Within minutes, Lily was asleep, exhausted by everything she'd been through. Ethan emerged from the bedroom, carefully closing the door behind him. He looked at Laura and gestured toward the balcony. They stepped outside into the cold night air. The city spread out below them, lights twinkling like earthbound stars. Up here, on the 14th floor, they were removed from the chaos of the streets. It felt safe, peaceful. "She's going to have nightmares," Ethan said quietly. "For weeks, probably months. She's going to need therapy, someone to help her process what she went through." "Kids are resilient," Laura said. "She has you. She'll be okay." "I hope you're right." Ethan leaned against the railing, his breath forming clouds in the cold air. "I keep thinking about Fletcher, about how he died trying to help us. He didn't have to do that. He could have turned us away, could have claimed he never saw us." "He was a good man," Laura said. "The kind of man who couldn't stand by and watch injustice happen. The world needs more people like him." "The world needs more people like you," Ethan corrected. "You could have given up a dozen times, could have surrendered, could have run and never looked back, but you kept fighting, kept pushing forward because you believed in doing the right thing. I had help. I couldn't have done it alone. None of us can do anything alone. That's what the past few days taught me." He turned to face her fully. "Laura, I meant what I said earlier about giving this, whatever this is between us, a chance, but I need you to understand what you'd be getting into." "What do you mean?" "I'm a single father with a traumatized 7-year-old daughter. I have nightmares from my time in Afghanistan. I live in a remote cabin in the mountains because I don't trust easily, and I like my space. I'm not an easy person to be with, and Lily has to come first, always." "I wouldn't expect anything else," Laura said. "And I'm not exactly a prize either. I'm a cop with trust issues who just helped take down a dozen corrupt officers from her own department. I'll probably have PTSD from being hunted through the mountains, and I have no idea what my life looks like going forward, where I'll work, where I'll live, any of it." Ethan smiled slightly. "So we're both disasters." "Pretty much." "But maybe we could be disasters together?" Laura felt her heart skip. "Yeah, maybe we could." He reached out and took her hand, and they stood there on the balcony, looking at the lights of the city, neither of them sure what came next, but both willing to find out together. The next morning brought the start of a long process. Laura spent hours at the FBI field office, giving her statement, going through every detail of the past 3 days and the investigation that had preceded it. Agent Webb, Marcus, was there, and they had an emotional reunion where he apologized for not being able to tell her the truth about his undercover role. "I hated lying to you," he said. "You were the best partner I ever had, Laura, And watching you uncover the same corruption I'd been investigating, knowing I couldn't help you or warn you, it was torture. You helped more than you know, Laura said. You saved my evidence. That's everything. Over the following weeks, the scope of the corruption became clear. The drug operation Reeves had been running stretched from Frost Valley all the way to the Canadian border, generating millions of dollars in revenue. 12 officers from Frost Valley PD were arrested, along with 3 state police officers, 2 judges, and a dozen civilians who'd been part of the distribution network. The media descended on the story like vultures. Hero cop exposes massive corruption ring, read one headline. Small-town police department's dark secret, read another. Laura found herself thrust into the spotlight, giving interviews, accepting commendations she didn't feel she deserved. Through it all, Ethan and Lily were there. They stayed in the city for the first month, with the FBI footing the bill for their hotel while Laura recovered and gave testimony. Lily started seeing a child psychologist who specialized in trauma, and slowly the nightmares began to fade. She made friends with the children of other FBI agents, and her natural resilience began to assert itself. Ethan was quieter about his own struggles, but Laura saw the signs, the way he startled at loud noises, the way he checked and rechecked the locks on the hotel room door, the way his hand would drift to his hip where his gun would have been. They were all carrying scars from what they'd been through, but they were carrying them together. 2 months after that night in the mountains, Laura had a decision to make. The Frost Valley Police Department, what remained of it after the arrests, offered her a promotion to captain. They wanted her to help rebuild, to restore trust in a department that had been thoroughly compromised. It was tempting, it was vindication, it was everything she'd worked toward, but it also meant going back to a place filled with painful memories, meant working in a building where corrupt officers had planned her murder, meant driving past the river where she'd nearly drowned. She turned it down. Instead, she accepted a position with the state police, working in their internal affairs division. It was a job that would let her do what she did best, rooting out corruption, holding bad cops accountable, fighting for integrity in law enforcement. And it was based in the state capital, just 2 hours from Frost Valley. Just 2 hours from Ethan and Lily. They'd returned to their cabin a month earlier, once the FBI was satisfied there were no remaining threats. Laura had visited twice, and each time felt more like coming home than returning to her own empty apartment ever had. On a Saturday afternoon in early spring, almost exactly 4 months after that night in the frozen river, Laura drove up the mountain to the cabin. The snow was melting, revealing green underneath, and birds were singing in the trees. The access road was muddy but passable, and when she pulled up to the cabin, Lily came running out to meet her. "Officer Laura, you're here! I've been waiting and waiting!" Laura scooped the little girl up in a hug, marveling at how much she'd grown in just a few weeks. Kids had a way of bouncing back that adults envied. Ethan appeared in the doorway, and Laura's breath caught. He was smiling, a real genuine smile that made her heart flutter. "Hey," he said. "Hey yourself." They'd been talking every day, video calls and text messages and long phone conversations late at night. They'd been taking it slow, building a foundation of friendship before rushing into anything else, but the connection was there, undeniable and growing stronger. "I made lunch," Ethan said. "Nothing fancy, just sandwiches, but we can eat outside. The weather's finally nice enough." They ate on the porch, with Ranger sprawled at their feet and Lily talking a mile a minute about everything and nothing. After lunch, Lily wanted to show Laura the fort she'd built in the woods, and they spent an hour exploring while Ethan cleaned up. When they returned, Ethan suggested a walk, just the two of them. Lily was happy to stay behind with Ranger and her art supplies, drawing pictures of all the adventures they'd had. Ethan led Laura down a familiar path, the one that led to the river, the same river where this had all started, where Laura had nearly died and Ranger had saved her life. But it looked different now. The ice was gone, replaced by rushing water that sparkled in the sunlight. The banks were lined with early wildflowers, and the air smelled like pine and earth and new beginnings. They walked to the spot where Ethan had pulled Laura from the water. Someone, probably Ethan, had placed a small memorial there, a simple stone with Fletcher's name and the words, "A good man who died doing right." Laura touched the stone gently. "He deserved better." "He got what he wanted," Ethan said. "He helped save someone who needed saving. He stood up to injustice. That's not a bad way to be remembered. They stood in silence for a moment, honoring the memory of a man they'd barely known but who'd given everything to help them. Then Ethan spoke again. Laura, I've been thinking about what comes next, for us. Yeah? These past few months, getting to know you, watching you with Lily, talking to you every day, it's been good. Better than good. It's been the best thing that's happened to me since Sarah died. Laura's heart was pounding. It's been pretty amazing for me, too. But I need to know if this is real. If this is something that can last beyond the crisis that brought us together, because Lily's getting attached. Hell, I'm getting attached. And we can't invest in something that's going to fall apart. I don't have a crystal ball, Laura said. I can't promise we'll never fight or struggle or face hard times, but I can promise that I'm all in, that whatever challenges come, I want to face them with you and Lily, if you'll have me. Ethan turned to face her fully, and his eyes were bright with emotion. Laura Bennett, you are the bravest, most stubborn, most incredible person I've ever met. You drove into a frozen river and came out fighting. You never gave up, never quit, even when it would have been easier to surrender. And somehow, impossibly, you ended up in my life. Are you complaining? Hell no. I'm thanking whatever force in the universe brought you to my door that night. He reached into his pocket and pulled out something small. I know it's fast. I know we're probably crazy. But life's too short and too uncertain to waste time being cautious. He opened his hand, revealing a simple silver ring with a small diamond. Laura stopped breathing. This was Sarah's, Ethan said quietly. She would have liked you. She would have wanted Lily to have a mother who was brave and kind and strong. And I hope, she'd be happy that I found someone who makes me believe in second chances. Ethan, I'm not asking you to marry me tomorrow. I'm asking if you'll consider it, if you'll think about building a life with us. Taking your time, no pressure, but knowing that when you're ready, this is here. We're here. Laura felt tears streaming down her face. Happy tears this time, not tears of fear or grief or exhaustion. Yes, she said. Yes, I'll think about it. And yes, I want to build a life with you and Lily. And yes to everything. Ethan laughed and pulled her into his arms, and they stood there by the river where this had all begun, holding each other while the water rushed past and the sun warmed their faces. When they walked back to the cabin hand in hand, Lily took one look at them and squealed. Does this mean Officer Laura is going to live with us? Not yet, Ethan said, but someday, if that's okay with you. It's very okay with me. Lily threw her arms around Laura's waist. You can help Dad with the hard stuff and teach me about being brave and play games with me and be my friend. Your friend and maybe something more, Laura said, kneeling down to Lily's level. How would you feel about me being part of your family? Lily's face grew serious, and for a moment Laura worried she'd pushed too fast. But then the little girl smiled, a smile so full of joy and hope that Laura's heart nearly burst. I think my mommy would like that, Lily said. I think she'd be happy that Daddy found someone nice, and I think she'd want me to have someone to help take care of me and love me. So, yes, I want you to be part of our family. Laura hugged her tight, and over Lily's head she met Ethan's eyes. He was crying too, and Laura realized that they were all getting a second chance here, a chance to heal, to grow, to build something beautiful from the ashes of tragedy and trauma. The trial began 6 months later. Laura testified for 3 days, laying out everything she'd discovered about the corruption in Frost Valley PD. Marcus Webb, his real name was Marcus Rodriguez, Agent Rodriguez's nephew, which explained some things, testified about his undercover work. Ethan testified about the manhunt, about being chased and shot at, and forced to run for his life with his daughter. The evidence was overwhelming. Reeves and 8 of his co-conspirators received life sentences without possibility of parole. The others got anywhere from 15 to 40 years. The judges who'd been involved were disbarred and imprisoned. The entire corrupt network was dismantled. On the day the verdicts came down, Laura stood on the courthouse steps with Ethan, Lily, Marcus, and Agent Rodriguez. The media swarmed them, asking for comments, asking how it felt to have won. It doesn't feel like winning, Laura said into the microphones. A good man died. Ranger Tom Fletcher gave his life trying to help us. Nothing we do here today brings him back. But maybe, just maybe, his sacrifice means something. Maybe it means that corruption doesn't win, that good people who stand up and fight can make a difference. Beside her, Lily held up a picture she'd drawn. It showed Ranger the dog with his badge, Fletcher with his ranger hat, and all of them together surrounded by hearts. "My dad says heroes are people who do the right thing even when it's scary," Lily said into the cameras with the unself-conscious confidence of a child. "Officer Laura is a hero, my dad is a hero, Ranger Tom was a hero, and my dog Ranger is a hero too, and heroes always win in the end." The clip of Lily's statement went viral. Within days, it had been viewed millions of times. People across the country were inspired by this little girl's simple faith in justice and goodness. A foundation was established in Fletcher's name to support families of federal employees killed in the line of duty. Ranger received formal recognition from the state police and became something of a celebrity, though he remained as humble and steadfast as always. Laura, Ethan, and Lily slowly built their life together. Laura kept her apartment in the city during the week for work, but every weekend she drove up the mountain to the cabin. She helped with homework, played in the woods, learned to braid hair properly, so Ethan didn't have to struggle with it anymore. Slowly, carefully, they became a family. A year to the day after that night in the frozen river, Ethan proposed properly. Not with Sarah's ring this time, but with one he'd chosen specifically for Laura. A band of silver inscribed with coordinates, the coordinates of the spot on the river where Ranger had pulled her from the water. "Because that's where our story began," he said. "That's where everything changed." Laura said yes without hesitation. They were married 3 months later in a simple ceremony by that same river, with Lily as the flower girl and Ranger as the ring bearer. Marcus was Ethan's best man, and Agent Rodriguez stood up for Laura. Fletcher's adult children attended, and they told Laura that their father would have been honored to have played a role in bringing their family together. The wedding was small and intimate and perfect. As Laura and Ethan exchanged vows, promising to stand by each other through whatever challenges came, to face the darkness together and find the light, she thought about how far they'd all come. A year ago, she'd been drowning in a frozen river, certain she was about to die. Now she was standing in the sunshine, surrounded by people she loved, beginning a new chapter. Life was strange and beautiful and unpredictable. Tragedy could strike without warning. But so could grace, so could love, so could second chances. As Ethan kissed her and Lily cheered and Ranger barked happily, Laura thought about all the people who'd helped bring them to this moment. Fletcher, who'd given his life. Marcus, who'd maintained his cover even when it meant watching Laura walk into danger. The FBI agents who'd rescued them. Even Sarah, Ethan's first wife, who'd loved him and given him Lily and whose memory would always be honored in their home. They were all connected, all part of the same story. A story about ordinary people doing extraordinary things. About standing up for what's right even when it costs everything. About love growing in the aftermath of trauma. About families forged not by blood, but by choice and sacrifice and unshakable commitment. The reception was held at the cabin, with friends and family and fellow law enforcement officers who'd come to celebrate. Laura danced with Ethan under string lights hung between the trees, and later she danced with Lily, spinning the little girl around until they were both dizzy and laughing. As the sun set and the first stars appeared, Laura stood with her new husband and daughter, looking at the life they'd built together. "Happy?" Ethan asked, his arm around her waist. "Happier than I ever thought possible," Laura said honestly. "Me too," Lily chimed in. "This is the best day ever." "Well, maybe second best," Laura said. "The best day was when Ranger pulled me out of the river and brought me to you." Aunt Lily considered this seriously. "That was a pretty good day, even though it was scary." "The best things in life usually are," Ethan said. "Scary and wonderful all at once." Laura thought about the truth of that, about how the scariest moment of her life, drowning in that river, hunted by corrupt cops, certain she was about to die, had led her here, to this moment, to this family. She wouldn't have chosen to go through it, wouldn't have asked for the terror or the pain or the losses they'd suffered, but she also wouldn't trade what came after, wouldn't trade Ethan's steadfast love or Lily's boundless joy or the sense of finally, truly belonging somewhere. Sometimes the worst moments of our lives lead us to the best ones. Sometimes we have to break before we can heal. Sometimes we have to lose everything to find what really matters. As she held her family close under the stars, Laura sent a silent thank you to everyone who'd helped them get here. To Fletcher, who'd given his life. To Marcus, who'd fought to protect her. To Sarah, who'd loved Ethan first and raised Lily with such care. To Ranger, the dog who'd quite literally saved her life. And to herself, the woman who'd refused to give up, who'd fought when it would have been easier to surrender, who'd believed in justice even when her own department had become corrupt. She was that woman still a cop, still fighting for what was right. But now she had more to fight for, had a family to protect, a daughter to raise, a husband to grow old with. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges, struggles, hard days, and sleepless nights. But they'd face them together, just as they'd faced everything else. Together, they were stronger than any challenge that came their way. Together, they were unbreakable. And as the music played and the stars shone overhead, and Lily fell asleep against her father's shoulder, Laura thought about how a single moment could change everything. How one night in a frozen river could lead to this, to love, and family, and home. The dog had dragged a police officer from the river, but what happened after stunned more than just the cop force. It stunned everyone who heard the story. Because sometimes, in the darkest moments, we find not just survival, but something far more precious. We find our way home. And home, Laura had learned, wasn't a place. It was people. It was love. It was standing by the river with the man who'd saved her, and the child who'd accepted her, and the dog who'd brought them all together. It was this, right here, right now. And it was perfect. Years later, when people asked Laura about those harrowing days, about the manhunt, and the corruption, and the dramatic rescue, she'd tell them the whole story. About the crash, and the river, and the strangers who became family. About Fletcher's sacrifice, and the FBI raid, and justice finally being served. But what she remembered most, what she held closest to her heart, wasn't the danger or the drama. It was Lily's small hand in hers as they walked through the woods. It was Ethan's quiet strength, the way he'd protected them all without hesitation. It was Ranger's steady presence, loyal and true. It was the way their broken pieces had somehow fit together to create something whole and beautiful and strong. That was the real story. Not the corruption or the manhunt or the trials. The real story was about love growing in impossible circumstances, about family formed in fire and ice, about second chances and new beginnings, and the incredible resilience of the human heart. And that story didn't end with the trial verdicts or even the wedding. It continued every day, in every laugh and every struggle, and every moment they chose each other. It would continue for the rest of their lives. Because some bonds, forged in crisis and tempered by love, are truly unbreakable. And theirs was one of them. The end.